Good morning and welcome to the final day of the Legislative Commission Budget Subcommittee. I'd like to call this committee meeting to order. I am Assemblywoman Danielle Monroe Moreno and I chair the Assembly Ways and Means Committee. Today we will hear presentations, high-level presentations from the following agencies: the Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation, the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and the Department of Wildlife. We will take approximately an hour break at the end of today's presentations because we have to be back in this room at 1 p.m. for our IFC meeting. I'll remind all the members and guests attending both here in Carson City and in Las Vegas to silence your electronic devices. Exhibits for today's meetings are available to be viewed online at the Nevada Legislative website, and printed copies are at the table at the back of the hearing rooms. There will be 2 opportunities for public comment. If you'd like to call in for public comment, our call-in number for today is 888-475-4499. The meeting ID is 869-0873-4795. And then please press pound. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes for each speaker. We will be timing it because we're on a tight schedule today. If you'd like to email your public comment to us, you can do so by emailing it to fiscal@lcb.state.nv.us. So with that, let's go to the first item on today's agenda. Committee Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Senators Buck, Canizaro, Dondero Loop,
Here.
Neal,
Here.
Wen,
Here.
Stone, here. Taylor, Titus,
Here.
Assembly members Anderson,
Present.
Bacchus, present. Brown-May,
Here.
Dickman, here. Hafen, Hibbets, Howdigi,
Here.
Koenig, here. Mosca,
Here.
O'Neill, here. Torres Fawcett, here. Watts, here. Yeager,
here.
Chair Monroe Moreno.
And I am here. Will you please mark Senator Canizaro and Assemblymember Hafen present when they arrive? That takes us to the second item on our agenda. Will be the first opportunity for public comment. If you'd like to make public comment here in Carson City, I invite you to the table. If you're in Las Vegas and like to make public comment there, I invite you to the table there. Not seeing anyone here in Carson City for public comment and not seeing anyone at the table in Las Vegas, do we have anyone joining us on the phone line that would like to make public comment?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good morning. Could you all hear me okay?
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Monroe Moreno. Good morning to you and all of the hardworking committee. My name is Dora Martinez, and I want to thank Senator Fabian, and I'm going to butcher his last name because I'm using my AI and it pronounces it to me, Donate, for passing on the language access accommodation that is available at the LCB, at the legislative building, for people who are ASL users, and it also translates to Tagalog and Spanish. And this is, I want to give credit where credit is due. I want to thank, who is no longer there, Leslie Cohen, and the person that are allies that we work with, the Office of the Nevada Governor's Council, the Developmental Disability Office, Catherine Nielsen and her small team for making this happen possible. So thank you to you all, and I appreciate your ongoing effort to make universal design inclusion in the legislature so we could all be heard. And I thank you for always announcing the caller ID. I memorized the calling phone number, but I appreciate you announcing the ID calling in slowly so we could dial and participate. So bless you all and thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Next caller.
Good morning. For the record, Fred Volz, V-O-L-T-Z. Regarding item 5's wildlife budget, a multi-year problem exists where the department and commission regularly fund county advisory boards. All 17 counties are to have such boards, only 15 do. Despite NRS requiring attendance at each commission meeting, only 5 or 6 out of the 15 intermittently comply. The department and commission are aware, but continue giving out public funds for no services rendered. Removing CAB budget funding for non-participation is appropriate since program management has failed. Conflicting statements about performance duties show up on the NDOW website, asserting they only choose to, quote, serve sportsmen and women, unquote, versus the governor's budget and NRS reflecting protecting, conserving, managing, and restoring wildlife and its habitat for the citizens of Nevada, unquote. Wildlife's best interests and those of all Nevadans have been regularly ignored in favor of running what is effectively a private hunting operation with public funds. Insist on NDOW presenting a policy creation process that also benefits wildlife and non-licensee Nevadans before budget approval. Lastly, there is no need for any general fund appropriations to the Wildlife Department. Department licensees convert public property, wildlife, into private property with no compensation to the public treasury. The current licensees paid are akin to the DMV charging only for a driver's license, then giving away free license plates and annual registrations. Wildlife's full value needs to be paid to the state when it is converted to private property. State agencies need to be self-funding whenever possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller.
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no other callers to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. And again, if someone missed the first opportunity for public comment, we will have a second at the end of today's meeting. And that we'll move on to the third item on our agenda, and that will be the high-level overview from the Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation, and we invite you to the table. Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, Christopher Sewell, I'm the Director of the Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation, also known as DETR. Good morning, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I really appreciate being here and presenting this overview for you. As you can see, our slide deck is 30-something pages long, and I guarantee we will not go over every single slide. That is for your information. This will be a high-level presentation, and all of my administrators do know that. So
We appreciate that.
yes. Just some basic housekeeping information. We do, on our slide deck, up in the top right corner, we do have page numbers. So if you do have a question on a slide, there is page numbers so that we can all be on the same page on that. And I'm going to introduce some individuals here. You know, I call myself a temporary captain of a ship. That's what I am as a director. I'm a temporary captain. And the people that are behind me are the people that do the real work. And without them, we would have a hard time. They are the experts in the field. And I'll introduce them. And I encourage you, if you have questions about DETR, please reach out to them directly. You don't have to reach out to me. You can reach out to them directly because they have the answers. They're the experts. And I'm probably going to get in a little bit of grief for this from other directors. but I will put up my executive staff over any other executive staff in the state. That is how well they work. That is the team that I have. Let me introduce them. Our first individual I'd like to introduce is Josh Marhevka. He's my Deputy Director over Operations, including our financial management. Second person will be Troy Jordan. He's my Deputy Director over Programs, and he's also the Legislative Liaison to the Legislature. So if you do have general questions and you can't get a hold of one of us, he's also a very good person to reach out to. Christine Nelson, she's my Employment Security Division Administrator. Drazen Elise is my Rehabilitation Division Administrator. Dave Schmidt, I think you all know Dave. He's our Chief Economist. And Marshall Sneed, she's our Executive Director of Owen. And Patrice Perez, she's the Acting Administrator of the Nevada Equal Rights Commission. And then, of course, Carl Stanfield, he's our IT Administrator. As I said, these are the experts and they make it run. And we wouldn't be here today unless we had this team. So, Dieter's mission and vision, we provide customer service to Nevadans. That's the bottom line. And 2 years ago, we had some problems. And I can say now, we provide customer service to Nevadans. And we'll go over some of the highlights of that and some of the challenges we're going to be facing with that as well. Our priorities are continuity, accessibility, and innovation. And the continuity, we need to maintain and grow Dieter staff to ensure continuity and accessibility of services to Nevadans. Dieter is Nevada's workforce agency. And then some of our accomplishments. Many of you were part of the session 2 years ago, and we appreciate the funding you gave us to upgrade our unemployment insurance system. We've already rolled out phase 1, and that was done just about a year ago, February of last year. And that was the tax side. And it rolled out on time, on budget, on point. I think we had 13 defects the day that we opened and turned it on. That's how well this team works together. And we were doing very well. I did get a complaint though. And that was a complaint because in order to log in and your password, our passwords went from 10 characters to 14 characters. And people are going, oh no, 14 characters. But that is actually a federal requirement that we have to have now. And it's also going to be a 14-character password when we roll out phase 2, which is our benefit side, which is going to be this summer. One of the things we noticed on the rollout of phase 1, delinquent taxes. We were having a hard time collecting delinquent taxes from businesses. We averaged about $10 million a year. Now we're up to $50 million a year because the system is so much better. It automates things for us, and we can get that money where it needs to be in the hands of the people that need to have it for unemployment, or if they're looking for a job in our employee NV hubs. So that's a huge increase. And so that's actually going to pay for this system in itself in probably a year. We also had an application for our Commission on Post-Secondary Education for their applications on post-secondary private schools. 31 increase in application completions compared to the older system. And the older system was pretty much by hand in spreadsheets. So again, thank you for those two funding mechanisms last session. They're paying dividends. And this summer, when we roll out the benefit side, they're going to pay more dividends to make it easier for our citizens and your constituents to file for unemployment. DETR funding for the next 2 years of the biennium that we're requesting. First year is $358 million. Second year is $343 million. Of that breakdown, 46.5% is federal. General fund is only 3.5%. And other, which is program fees, balance forward, our SEP program, P&I, treasurer's interest, P&I is penalty and interest, is about 39.5%. And then we have a cost allocation, and to our cost allocated budgets at 10.5%. Our FTE count right now is 944.5. I can never figure out that 0.5. We have split a person, I don't know. And I'll let our administrators go into their FTE count. So, challenges. Customer service versus system modernization. As we move into the final stage of system modernization for phase 2, we're going to have to use our top-of-the-line people for testing. And so we're going to have to balance that out, making sure the system is ready to go online with testing and things of that nature for our SMEs. And we're going to have to balance that with the customer service on making sure that we serve Nevadans. You're also going to hear customer service versus client load increases from our rehabilitation administrator. Our client load and rehabilitation has increased tenfold. And we're going to have to balance that. And on a changing employee landscape, you know, we all know that coming out of the pandemic, and we lost a lot of jobs on the Strip, lost a hospitality jobs on the Strip that aren't coming back. So it's a changing landscape. We're looking at, you know, the lithium loop, and how do we train and upskill for those jobs. We're already doing that, and we'll highlight some of those things. The DETR organization on page 7, that's, if you have a question about our organization, I think most of you have already seen that slide. It is a repeat from probably when I didn't have gray hair. So, but I want to also, before I turn it over to my administrators, go over some questions and answers that I think you guys are probably going to be asking. And so that way we can probably get this done and quicker. This presentation is based on the governor's recommended budget. And we have not been asked to make any changes at this time. Our vacancy rate is 8%. For a large agency, that's pretty good. I think the only large agency that has beaten me is DMV. But we're sitting at 8%. 2 years ago, we were at 35. We couldn't find people to work for DETR. DETR was a 4-letter word. And it was tough to find people to work for DETR. But now we have people knocking on our door saying, we would love to work for you, and that's because of these people behind me. Overpayments waived. During the latter part of the session and during the interim, I had questions on overpayments and waiving those overpayments. We have waived 112,776 overpayments for our citizens of Nevada. 112,776. Let me put that in context. Prior to 2020, we waived fewer than 10 over the prior 5 years prior to 2020. Overpayment waivers are a daily part of what we do now. That's incorporated into what we do. And we look at those very seriously, as you can see. Some of our highlights in the funding. We helped fund the teacher stipends. As a matter of fact, I found $1.1 million more that I can fund teacher stipends. and that is going to be on the IFC agenda today. Hope for Prisoners. Also working on a program for training at Florence McClure Women's Prison down in Southern Nevada as well. Right now, we're working with the Department of Corrections. We also have a child care worker training program at select entry institutions that we've paid for. We also funded new training for new attorneys at the Department of Indigent Defense, or DIDS. We've also worked with the Latin Chamber of Commerce on training programs for their businesses on as you grow your business, how to hire employees and what you need to do, so that we're helping that group of those entrepreneurs on expanding their businesses and having opportunities for more Nevada citizens. We also reached out to a Rotary, Sparks Rotary, which are business people. And basically the deal came down to Dieter will match funding. You raise the money, we'll match the funding to go into middle school and high schools that they help sponsor. Some of the items that they've been able to purchase are new lathes. The lathes that the middle school was using were basically pretty much just after from World War II. That doesn't help a student. That's not what they're working on in the real world. So we worked with Sparks Rotary on helping fund some of those items. Also on today's IFC agenda is we're going to be working with the Boys and Girls Club on working with their kids and young adults on workforce and getting ready for the workforce. And what do you want to do? And so that's also on the agenda for IFC today. And you can see I mentioned off a lot of things about young adults. And I think we've all heard the saying, they're 25% of our population, but 100% of our future. And that's how we have to look at it. We have a changing dynamic in workforce, and we need to make sure they're ready. We have a changing dynamic in workforce where we have people that are leaving institutions, and we need to make them worker ready. And that's what we're doing with the Hope for Prisoners and the training programs. And one of the things, Lithium Americas in Northern Nevada, we're going to try to use a model that the Hope for Prisoners uses in Southern Nevada and use that in one of our prisons in Northern Nevada so that we can get them trained up in, whether it be as an electrician or something along those lines, to go to work directly for Lithium America in Northern Nevada. And that helps us. And because there's going to be a worker shortage for that. And we're looking at every opportunity that we can look at to fill that shortage. And so we're going to do that in Northern Nevada as well. So I'm working with the Department of Corrections on that as well. You know, I've also said the best kept secret is Dieter and the Dieter Workforce Division. And you're going to also see, we're now doing outreach. We're going to be doing outreach because of our NUI program and rollout for the benefits, but we're also going to include outreach for people that are looking for jobs, so that way they know where to go, because we've never done that, and we need to do it. I'm tired of being the best kept secret in the world, not only for workers and prospective workers, but for our young adults and our businesses. So we're going to be doing outreach, and you're going to be seeing that in the next several months on making sure that we're out there and in front. So those are some of the hopefully answers to questions you might have right now. I'm sure we'll be ready for questions after we're done with the presentation. But I'm going to turn this over to my rehabilitation administrator, Drazen Elise. Drazen, why don't you go ahead and very high overview.
Thank you, Director. Good morning. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, my name is Drazen Elise, and as Director mentioned, I serve as the Administrator of the Rehabilitation Division, and also with me in the audience, We have my amazing deputies, Michelle Merrill, Deputy of Programs, as well as Brett Martinez, Deputy of Operations, who, if you have any questions later on, they'll be able to help me answer those. So in short, Rehabilitation Division assists individuals with disabilities to obtain economic independence. And that's really accomplished through either assistance with obtaining employment or assistance with obtaining Social Security benefits. In Rehabilitation Division, we have three bureaus and one program. One of those bureaus, BDA, provides medical determinations for Nevada seeking disability benefits. Social Security Administration, Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation, and BSBVI provide assistance to individuals with disability in obtaining employment, and a business enterprise program also assists individuals who are blind or visually impaired to operate small businesses on public property. And we also have, of course, the administrative unit that helps ensure the operations of the agency. Moving on to the next slide, essentially provides the overview of how our agency is funded. Most of the funding, as you can see, comes from federal sources. The Bureau of Disability Education is fully funded by the Social Security Administration, so it's 100% federally funded. The Blind Business Enterprise Program is a self-funded program. The blind operators who manage the operations, manage businesses on public property, such as snacks at the DMVs or a gift store at the Hoover Dam. We have about 27 businesses throughout Nevada that our blind operators are managing, and they pay from the part of their profits, they pay back to the state, and that's how that program is funded, so we can continue finding new locations and training new operators to work at those or to manage those. The Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation and Bureau of Services to the Blind are funded primarily through Section 110 Vocational Rehabilitation Federal Grant, which is issued to us by the U.S. Department of Education, Rehabilitation Services Administration, and it's funded through a formula grant of 78.7% and requires a non-federal match of 21.3%. So the other part in our breakdown there is the money that is received from the blind services, and the general fund portion is about 9% of our overall agency budget. In our previous presentations over this last year, we have presented many times about the increase in the client services that our agency has seen, both with our Bureau of Disability Education as well as Vocational Rehabilitation and Bureau of Services to the Blind and Visually Impaired. We have seen a very significant increase in these applications, and we have had to come to you in front of the IFC probably for the last 2 years, almost at every single one, informing you of what the level of service that is needed currently exists, what type of resources we need in order for us to be able to continue serving our clients. We have seen about over 200% increase in our clients, in our number of applications that are coming through our agency, and we've had the same allocation of staff to be able to serve the Nevadans that are coming through our doors. So the proposed budget and what you see in the screen would help us address those issues. The first one here is the Rehabilitation Administration. We'll be asking for 2 new FTEs to help support some of these additional activities that are happening in the agency, as well as one position would be for a grant analyst that would help us find some additional grants and additional sources of funds that the agency would be able to use in order for us to serve our clients, so that we don't have to continuously solely rely on coming to you for the general fund appropriation. Additionally, Bureau of Disability Education has also seen a significant increase in number of cases that they have to process. Currently, there's a national backlog of pending applications for Social Security disability, which is at an all-time high, and there currently exists over 1.1 million initial disability claims pending across the United States. In Nevada, we have increased the number of claims that we processed from about 19,000 in 2019 to this last federal fiscal year, we've processed over 29,000 applications. And that's been done with the same number of staff. Also, we've been able to not just process more applications, but also reduce the time that it takes us to process that to now from being one of the on the bottom end of the national trends to now significantly leading the national trends, and we are probably about 20 days ahead of most of the other agencies in our region when it comes to processing the claims. These additional staff, as well as the additional funds that would be used to process applications, are essentially what's part of this budget. Additionally, Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation and Bureau of Services to the Blind and Visually Impaired. We also have additional positions that we are seeking as well to assist us in processing a number of these applications. Just on Monday, we have received 40 new applications for VR services. And just to put that into context, we have 55 counselors statewide, or 55 positions statewide. So if each one of the counselors gets that one new case one day, and the numbers start to increase very quickly. Our cases are open much longer than in the general workforce services. Our cases last anywhere from 18 months to over 2 years. So as we start serving new clients, it takes us a lot longer. It's much quicker for the cases to start accumulating and for our customer service possibly to be impacted if we don't receive certain assistance in order to just have more workforce to be able to process these applications more quickly and to be able to truly provide good customer service for Nevadans with disabilities. Lastly, on the last program that's also requesting one additional position is our blind business enterprise program. The position that they're requesting is a maintenance position. As we have a lot more locations in Southern Nevada, we are sometimes in a need of having a lot quicker response to service needs in our blind business enterprises as far as repairs of the food service equipment. And our staff currently, while they're very proficient in managing businesses, sometimes lack the technical knowledge of some of this equipment. And while we do utilize a lot of vendors to help us repair equipment, having somebody who could help us ensure that the maintenance is done appropriately and the right calls are being made, we feel it will significantly save money for this program and ensure that we are providing good customer service to our blind business operators. This slide shows essentially the increase in number of applications from 2019 on, and that we've seen 229% increase over the course of just the last 3 years. This is the first time in the agency's history that we are seeing this type of an increase. Prior to this, the number of applications that we've seen would fluctuate somewhere between 2 to 3% increase, some years maybe 2 to 3% decrease. So this is the first time they've really seen a significant increase in folks seeking our services. On the next page, just shows that the number of clients, the caseload that's starting to grow as more and more folks are applying for our services, and our clients are working through those cases. The next chart shows the vocational rehabilitation federal grant formula that's awarded to the agency. The Nevada has not been able to fully draw down all of the federal dollars that the Rehabilitation Service Administration has awarded the state. We have been reverting anywhere from $4 million to $10 million in some years in federal funds because we did not have sufficient non-federal match to be able to draw these funds down. As you can see in 2026 and 2027, with this new proposed budget, that amount would that amount that we revert would significantly shrink, and we'll be able to really take a full advantage of all the federal resources that are provided to the state and allocated essentially for us to serve Nevadans with disabilities who need these necessary services. In this next slide, we just wanted to show some of the accomplishments that the agency has had over the last couple of years. So with all of this activity happening and the number of new clients that are coming through our services, the folks that we're helping obtain the employment, they have also been able to still significantly improve our federal performance indicators. As an example, in 2020, our measurable skills gain rate was about 15.1%, and we have increased that to 47.5% in the course of just a few years, and also have surpassed all of the national negotiated federal rates, with the exception of the credential rate in 2024. And we are definitely on pace to ensure that in 2025 that measure is also met. Additionally, the agency has worked a lot with the community organizations as well to ensure that we are able to provide good customer service, and we are working with everybody to ensure that the services for individuals with disabilities are increased across the board, not just within our own wheelhouse. One of the projects that we are very proud of is the Nevada Trip Project, which we have partnered with Nevada Department of Education and 8 other community resources to apply for a federal grant of $10 million, which we have received, to be able to create a roadmap or to map out all the services for students with disabilities ages 10 to 24, as well as their parents and guardians, so that they would know, regardless of where they live in the state, what type of services are available to them and how they could take advantage of those, and where they need to go to reach those as well. Currently, this project is set to roll out at the end of March or beginning of April of 2025, and there will be the soft launch with 3 rural districts, and then by the end of the year, we'll roll this out statewide. Also, one of the other significant places that we have made improvement is serving our students with disabilities. A couple of years ago, at the last legislative session, we have served only about 1,000 students with disabilities in a year. We have doubled that amount in the last state fiscal year, serving over 2,200 students. Our Bureau of Disability of Education has also made significant strides over the last couple of years in improving its operation. We have received a number of national recognitions with awards from Social Security Administration for leadership, training, and quality. We have also exceeded every federal goal, resulting in 29,284 decisions to Nevadans, and this is the first time probably in a decade that the Bureau of Disability Education has exceeded all of the federal goals that were set for the agency. And the last program that we wanted to highlight with some of the accomplishments is our Business Enterprise Program. This the program was also recognized by the Governor Lombardo and received Getting Stuff Done Award as well. It has also, this is also the first year in which the program has had multiple large openings of businesses in the state. One of the ones definitely that we're very excited to see is the Red Rock Canyon Visitor Center, the soft drinks bar, which has opened last year, and currently the operator that is working there is already able to significantly surpass the federal SGA employment or income rate, as well as also the signing of the first interlocal agreement with the Las Vegas Convention Center and Visitors Authority Center to operate the vending machines at all the monorail stations inside Nevada. So with that, I will turn this over to my amazing colleague, Christine Nelson.
Thank you, Administrator Ellis. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. For the record, I'm Christine Nelson, and I serve as the Administrator of the Employment Security Division at Dieter. Before I get started, I'd like to recognize my deputy administrators who, again, I mirror Director Sewell's comments. I could not do this job without. John Perrell's in the audience. He's the Deputy Administrator for the ESD Division over Workforce, and Patricia Allender, who is overseeing, she's the Deputy Administrator overseeing the Unemployment Insurance Program. This morning, I'll provide programmatic and budgetary overviews for Dieter Employment Security Division's Governor's recommended budget, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that this subcommittee may have. The Employment Security Division, which I'll refer to as ESD, oversees the administration of two very large program areas: workforce development, which includes the Office of Workforce Innovation, and the state's unemployment insurance program, all of which are under Agency 902. ESD also currently oversees the administration of the Commission on Post-Secondary Education, which is under Agency 360. Slide. On this slide is a list of ESD's executive budget accounts wherein these programs are administered from. Slide. Priorities for ESD in the next biennium include the continued budget authority requests that support innovation, which is reflected in ESD budget account 4772 for the continuation of the UI modernization project and AI implementation. Accessibility, which is reflected in ESD budget account 4772, connected with the UI modernization project and the outreach plan that Director Sewell mentioned to ensure that Nevadans gain efficient and effective access to the system and its resources, and in budget 4770 for the implementation of the client payment card system. Finally, coordination, which is reflected in ESD budget account 4770 and Owens budget accounts 1004 and 3270 for the continuance of Owens' convening and facilitation role for the Nevada's workforce system and its partners and stakeholders through braiding resources and ensuring network connections for a unified workforce response in Nevada. Slide. Overall funding is shown on this slide, which includes, and it's made up of approximately 42% federal funds from the U.S. Department of Labor, approximately 57% funding from other sources, which include Balance Forward, Career Enhancement Program funding, and UI penalties and interest, and less than 1% general fund appropriation. Slide. Major enhancements requested in ESD's governor's recommended budget are listed on the next two slides. I won't read through all these, but I do want to highlight a couple that correspond with ESD's priorities of innovation, accessibility, and coordination. First are the 34 FTE reclassification of intermittent positions to permanent positions in budget account 4770, Enhancement Decision Unit E310. These positions have been authorized in an intermittent capacity for well over a decade, and they serve clients and citizens in the Nevada's employee and V-hubs. It's imperative that these positions become permanent to maintain and sustain these services and to provide these incumbents stability that comes with permanent classification. Enhancements E325 and E551 in budget account 4770 correlate with accessibility and innovation, providing a client payment card system within Dieter's ESD and vocational rehabilitation client services programs that will provide clients with resources more effectively and efficiently. Currently, clients are issued paper vouchers, which most retail vendors will not accept, leaving clients with ineffective means to gain those resources that they need to start work. This client payment card system will solve that problem and will contain the internal controls and accountability tools that are needed to mitigate theft and improper usage of these resources. Slide. Enhancement Decision Unit E318 in budget account 4772 requests the continued authority for 19 intermittent positions in the next biennium to support the UI benefits and UI modernization system, aka NUI. This support after go live and throughout the next maintenance period will ensure system success. The state has invested millions of dollars in the NUI system, and it's our responsibility to Nevadans that we do this right and deploy a system that works. God forbid that we ever experience what we experienced with the pandemic. that decimated our old UI system, causing harm and hardship to Nevadans. Finally, Enhancement Decision Unit E231 in Budget Account 4772 requests continued authority for the ID.me contract in the next biennium to support fraud protection in the system. It's important to note that there are no general fund appropriation enhancement requests in any of ESD budget accounts. Slide. Accomplishments made in the UI program in this biennium are listed here, but the director mentioned them at his opening, so I won't reiterate that. I will add that the AI implementation development in ESD appeals has taken more time than what we have anticipated. Initially, implementation was slated for January of 2025. However, we're balancing and prioritizing our projects, NUI being number one. We're trying to mitigate the pressures placed on our ITD and ESD staff resources to thwart system issues caused by rushing and/or overloading staff. In addition to that, we want to make sure that this AI is developed and deployed with extreme thoughtfulness and consideration, with the proper internal controls and policies in place before launching such an innovative tool. To ensure this, DETR anticipates a date of go-live approximately in March of 2025, but we continue to assess the development of that tool, which may or may not delay that implementation. Slide. As the director mentioned, DETR is Nevada's state workforce department, designated by the U.S. Department of Labor, as well as the governor's office at the state level to administer Nevada's workforce programs. Workforce programs administered by DETR ESD are administered and provided to clients through the Employee NV hubs operated by ESD staff and the One-Stop American Job Centers that are operated by the two local workforce development boards, Nevada Works in the north and Workforce Connections in the south. Workforce Development Programs administrations live in ESD Budget Account 4770, which includes a number of state and federal workforce programs that provide workforce services, job training, and educational resources with the ultimate goal of serving citizens and employers by preparing and upskilling individuals for success in the workforce. Accomplishments made in the workforce program this biennium include the opening of 5 additional Employee NV hubs, which total 46 now total. This includes 33 career hubs, 13 business hubs, and a new youth hub in northern Nevada that's scheduled to open in summer of 2025. Additional accomplishments in the workforce made in this biennium, Director Sewell mentioned in his opening, which includes the teacher pipeline program, Hope for Prisoners programs, reentry programs, apprenticeship and training programs at our colleges in Nevada, and obligations made in that realm are approximately $40 million. Finally, approximately $22 million in obligations in this biennium and requested for continuance in this budget for state training programs provide additional training supports on the training programs that Director Sewell mentioned in his opening that I won't reiterate for time consideration. Slide. This slide depicts the positive outcomes that have been achieved in these workforce and training programs in 2024, demonstrating that these programs work. This concludes my presentation of the Employment Security Division budget, and I'll now turn the presentation over to Marshall Sneed, Executive Director of the Office of Workforce Innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator Nelson. Good morning, Marshall Sneed for the record. I'm the new Executive Director of the Office of Workforce Innovation, and I'm excited to share some of the highlights and progress we've made over the last 6 months since I've been in my role. I'd like to reintroduce you to the Office of Workforce Innovation, or OWIN, which was created via Governor's Executive Order in 2016 under the Sandoval administration, codified in a state statute in 2017, and has been under DETR administration since 2021. Our charge is to be the coordinator needed for the facilitation of the workforce system. And over the last 6 months, I've restructured the office, and we are focused on OWIN situating itself at the hub of the center of the workforce wheel, driving coordination amongst various workforce agencies, entities, and stakeholders, and fostering collaboration. Owen has transitioned out of the programmatic grantee unit that it became over the last few years, and we will not be the grantee or co-grantee on any future federal grants. Rather, Owen will be the convener, the facilitator, and the coordinator of workforce initiatives and activities that braid funding, resources, and efforts across Nevada's workforce system to ensure our workforce entities are aligned and working together to move our state's workforce initiatives forward. Initiatives that significantly strengthen our infrastructure for workforce training and help bolster diverse career pathway opportunities. Owen is also in front of ensuring businesses have a bird's eye view of the state of the workforce, and that Nevadans have the information they need to make informed decisions about their career. As DETR is the state's lead workforce agency, it should also be home to all of the state's workforce inventory, and Owen has focused on making that happen. We are now working closely with DETR RNA Division to administer the state's longitudinal data system, Empower. We work with GOED on the state's in-demand occupations list, and Owen also maintains the state's industry-recognized credentials list. This data, which is currently in PDF format, will soon be updated to user-friendly interactive dashboards on our website. In addition to that, we've also acquired the Southern Nevada Talent Pipeline website from the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance, LVGEA, and we will begin to transition this into a statewide endeavor. And right now, all of this inventory can be easily accessed in one location on the Owen website. Owen has made great strides with AB 428, which tasks Owen with establishing and administering a career pathway demonstration program and creating work-based learning opportunities. We've identified our 3 priority industries as education, healthcare, and clean energy. And we've established monthly meetings to ensure all agencies on the bill are aligned and working toward moving this initiative forward. Owen recently awarded $25,000 individually to 3 private entities to assist in enhancing their existing career pathway programs. We are also awarding $180,000 for internships across high schools and colleges and universities in hopes of connecting over 100 students to work-based learning opportunities in the 3 priority sectors identified. Finally, Owen has reestablished a career pathways website, formerly lifeworksnv.org. The new website is called careerpaths.nv.gov and will be a career pathway and work-based learning hub for in and out-of-school youth and all young adults in Nevada. And as we begin to market the relaunch of this website, Owen will work closely with our schools and workforce entities to ensure the relaunch is a success, connecting this information to thousands of disconnected youth across our state. Owen has been realigned to be the conductor of the workforce system. In fact, we'll be hosting Workforce Day at the Legislature on Wednesday, April 9th, which will give our partners the opportunity to connect and share information about the services they provide. Owen will continue to convene our workforce stakeholder consortium groups that drive workforce initiatives forward. We'll continue to convene businesses and employer events that steer industry-recognized credentialing back to the appropriate direction, and continue to facilitate the communication and coordination needed to ensure our state's workforce ecosystem is aligned, working together, and moving workforce development forward as a primary initiative for the state. Thank you. And I'd like to introduce you now to our DETR Deputy Director, Josh Marhevka.
Thank you, Director Sneed. Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. Josh Marhevka, Deputy Director for DETR. For the record, I'm going to be going over the next 3 slides. This will be brief. This is our Administrative Services Division. Budget account 3272 houses our financial management, human resources, public information officer, operations management, and internal audits. Budget account 3274 is our IT division, and 3273 is our research and analysis bureau. For budget account 3272, we're providing backup for an FTE that was provided off budget cycle, and we're also requesting 2 new fiscal staff to help support the department. And with that, I would like to pass it off to our IT Administrator, Carl Stanfield.
Thank you, Deputy Director Josh Marhevka. Good morning, Madam Chair, committee members. Thank you for having us here this morning. We have several slides to show. I'm not going to go over each one of our major enhancements, but I would like to call attention to E650. That's our implementation of 10 reclassified FTEs from intermittent to permanent PCNs. This consists of 5 IT professionals, 4 IT techs, and 1 IT manager. These positions are mission critical for the continued success of the ITD department to support DETR's mission on security and technology advancement for not just the staff, but for all citizens in the state of Nevada. Slide. Want to talk to a couple of success stories real quick. I won't speak to each one. Our UI mod, which has already been touched on a couple different times, UI mod 1, went live in February of 24. And while it goes and helps collect delinquent taxes, it also provides a friendly user interface for both staff and employers that helps both parties navigate the system in a much more efficient manner. Our UI modernization rollout 2 for benefits and appeals is still scheduled to go live in the summer of 2025. It is currently on time, on budget, and on schedule. And it is one of the few state of Nevada projects that continues to maintain that standard. Slide. We had a successful migration of the entire UINV system, as well as all legacy applications, to the cloud also in March of 2024. This enabled a much more efficient system for both staff and claimants, as the system itself was now easily accessible. This allowed us to also maintain the remaining 80 servers on-prem in a much more user-friendly environment with much more efficient connectivity. You may have heard about this. We are currently in the process of implementing artificial intelligence, and Administrator Nelson spoke to this a minute ago, stating a go live of March of this year. That project is currently on time and on budget as well. And I welcome any questions you may have regarding that project. I look forward to hearing your questions and providing any answers I may. One of the things that DETR ITD has done over the past 3 years is we are now at the forefront in our cybersecurity posture. What we have in our current roles, we have a huge responsibility to maintain and steward the money that flows through our department, as well as protect the citizens of Nevada. We have implemented several different security measures throughout the department, as well as training staff members, because security is truly everyone's problem and everyone's issue. That is all I have. I thank you very much for your time. And with that, I would like to introduce our chief economist, who you may know, Dave Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. My name is David Schmidt. I'm the Chief Economist for the Research and Analysis Bureau at DETR. I won't go into a lot of detail here, but just sort of at a high-level overview. You've heard a lot about the programs that we have here within DETR. I get to talk about the context that takes place in. Over the second half of 2024, we have seen some slowing employment growth in the state of Nevada. We went from having some of the fastest job growth in the country to some of the slowest over the last 6 months. A lot of this started in the middle of the summer, around the time that we had the Mirage close in Las Vegas, and we've seen a slowdown in growth since then. Our unemployment rate is the highest in the country at 5.7%. That's up about 0.5% from where we were a year ago. Not a statistically significant increase because of the nature of these statistics. Even 0.5% isn't enough to say that the number has really changed. Behold, this is the environment that we get to work in. The interesting thing about this is that at the same time, our wage growth in the state has accelerated. We started the year having very slow wage growth in the state. We're up to some of the fastest growth in terms of hourly wages in the state as we close out the year, coming in at now 6%. The slide says 5.8. That was before we released data for December. So we're in an interesting economic picture for the state, and that's what we do in the Research and Analysis Bureau, is try to make this information available and accessible, working with the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Taking a look at the state's unemployment insurance trust fund, we currently have a balance of close to $1.8 billion. High-level numbers, we bring in about $860 million a year in terms of revenue. That revenue is dedicated to paying unemployment benefits, of which we paid out about $460 million in the last year, earning about $60 million in interest from the federal government on that positive balance. That is high level where we are. Looking at what we might want in the trust fund, there's different ways that this can be measured. The one that we like to use is a federal measure that looks at average benefit payments over the last 3 recessions or the last 20 years, and that would suggest that we need a balance of about $2.6 billion, though that does include 2020 and the impacts of COVID when we paid out almost $2 billion that year alone. Next slide, please. One thing I'd like to highlight, Executive Director Sneed talked about the NPWR program. That's the state's longitudinal data system. This links administrative data from multiple agencies, including DETR, Department of Education, Nevada System of Higher Education, as well as other agencies, combining administrative data to help enable research across these different silos of data. As one example of the value of this program, in December, we had research forums that where researchers could present the research they did using research grants approved by the legislature last session. One project was from UNLV. They were looking at the requisite reform that the Board of Regents passed in 2019, which changed from a model where you had remedial education programs which were causing problems to providing supplemental support to students that needed that additional support with math and English education. They got a research grant in the neighborhood of $50,000. They were able to leverage that research over about 6 months into a 5-year, $1.2 million research grant from the federal government to help continue to look at this. And so we are bringing in outside funds, supporting using administrative data in the state to help determine the effectiveness of the programs that are taking place within the state. And I think that is a perfect encapsulation of the opportunity that the NPWR system provides. I'm very excited to be working with Owen to help continue to work with the data in that program, make it accessible, make it usable, and ultimately help it to make a difference for the people of the state. The director mentioned the goals that the department has, one of those being innovation. Another thing that we try to do is take the world of data that's out there. There's lots of data in the world today. We want to try to find ways to make that accessible and available to people in a context that makes sense. And so one of the things that we've recently produced, and you can see it in the slide here, there is a link. But if you go to, I'll give you another URL because we just got it up on our website, nevadaworkforce.com/legislative-districts. You can see within each legislative district in the state, be it Assembly or Senate, who has high unemployment, what demographic groups have high unemployment in the state. Back in 2017, we had a bill to highlight at the county level which groups have high unemployment compared to the county as a whole. This takes that same concept and applies it at the district level. Within your district, what groups have higher unemployment or lower labor force participation? How many people are receiving unemployment claims in your districts? How many people how much money is being paid out in your districts? How many people are receiving workforce services? How many different types of people have received services within the past year? Taking the data that exists at the statewide level, taking that administrative data and boiling it down to a context that makes sense, because often local information from survey data can be kind of messy. It's very hard to get. But when you're working with administrative data, you have the opportunity to say, here's how many people. There's 5, there's 6, there's 100, there's 1,000. Using administrative data while protecting the confidentiality of that information allows a much more detailed look at things. And that's a direction that we're exploring and continuing to try to innovate and produce new data with our existing resources to help highlight what exactly is happening in the state. And with that, I will turn it back over to our director.
For the record, Chris Sewell, Director of DETR. I guess I want to close by saying, one, thank you for letting us present this overview of DETR. And we look forward to working with you and continue our partnership for the Nevada citizens. And we stand ready for any questions.
Thank you so much. We do have several questions, and we are going to begin the questions with Assemblymember Watts.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I had a couple of questions about the unemployment insurance program. So, we know that due to your efforts, the backlog has come down, and we periodically have gotten updates. It seems like things are moving in the right direction. I know I still get a couple of messages probably each month from constituents that are concerned about the timeline to get their claims processed. Probably some of my colleagues are seeing the same thing. So I was just wondering if you could speak briefly to where we're at. Is the backlog clear? If not, where is it at? Where are we at in terms of kind of processing timelines for folks that are submitting claims? And then if there's any context you'd like to add about how the rollout of the modernized system will assist with those things. Thank you.
Chris Nelson, for the record, through you, Madam Chair, to the Assemblyman. So I think it was 2 years ago we came to this committee. I don't know if everybody was the same members on the committee. I don't believe so. But we had a backlog just in our appeals of, I think it started when I started this position at like 45,000 appeals. Last year we were at 14,000 appeals. Currently we are in normal operating caseload for appeals. The Department of Labor does not define backlog. They measure timeliness. And timeliness measures in lower authority appeals when an appeal is actually created in the appeal unit. Starts at 30 days to 40 days to an allowance of 90 days that's allowed through 2026 through the Department of Labor for our timeliness measure. We are within those standards, and our caseload right now for non-fraud appeals are scheduled into March of 2025. Now, fraudulent appeals take time. They take more time than that, but those are also on the docket, the ones that we currently have into and through March of 2025.
Thank you. So just to make sure I'm clear, so essentially there is no backlog in the sense that claims and appeals are being processed within that 30 to 90 day, or specifically appeals, because I know that was where the backlog kind of moved over to, right? So if there's an issue and there's an appeal, it's being handled within that 30 to 90 day window that's considered timely.
For the record, Chris Sewell, through you, Madam Chair, to Assemblyman Watts. Yes, we are considered timely for DOL standards. The DOL standard, and I'll sort of expand on that a little bit, it's timely at 80% of those cases. And so 20% of the cases may go over that 90 days, and that could be what you're getting some questions on. But we are at that standard for DOL, which is 80%.
Thank you. And then what efficiencies can we expect from the modernization of the UI system?
Chris Nelson, for the record, through you, Madam Chair, to the Assemblyman. So the NUI system creates a process that when a claim comes in, when a claim is going through intake, that takes out the conscious or unconscious maybe bias or inputs that staff have when they're taking in a claim. Maybe they don't recognize certain measures in a claim for UI eligibility and those sorts of things. That system will drill down to that claim so that it's efficiently comes in and processed in a more timely manner. Happy to have a presentation to this body if and when that benefits goes live. Happy to walk you through that. But we are projecting a significantly more efficient process for processing claims in not only the intake point of contact, but also through our adjudication process. The fraud cases go over to our BPC unit, but all of those claims along the way, all the way through appeals, which is the kind of, not the last stop, but most certainly the lower authority last stop of a claim's life. We're projecting significant increases in efficiency.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bacchus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I have two different type questions, and I hope that is okay, and then just a comment. My number one question is on the request for additional, well, it's existing federal funds that will be transferred to cover the verification contract for the identity verification. And I know when we were dealing with COVID, we had a lot of fraudulent claims that had come in during that time period. So I was curious, and I don't know if it's appropriate for you, Deputy Director Nelson, to answer this, but I'm kind of curious what kind of fraud claims we're looking at. Is it still a large percentage? What are we dealing with today, post-COVID?
Madam Chair, through you to the committee member, Chris Nelson, for the record.
Directly to the member.
Okay, thank you. So I have the number of appeal fraud cases that we currently have. Fraud still continues to this day. But the ID.me contract, the ID.me vendor and the contract, when we brought that on, significantly, like the day that it was deployed in the system, in the old UINV system, and we're planning on also having it in the new system. I mean, we are on track for that as well. It was like night and day. So the minute that was turned on, fraud diminished significantly. Currently in appeals, cases that are sitting in appeals, in the appeals unit, little over 1,000 fraud cases currently. So I can't remember like the numbers, but it was up in the hundreds of thousands. And I'll ping it to Deputy Director Jordan.
Good morning. For the record, Troy Jordan, Deputy Director. Madam Chairman, through you to the Assemblywoman's question. To answer the part of your question about what types of fraud do we see, there's two major types. The first is identity theft. That's what you heard about during the pandemic. That was what got all the headlines during the pandemic. ID.me and our other fraud prevention tools that we have available to us now, which NUI also has another built-in tool that will be in addition to the ones we have now, I'm not going to go on record and say it's completely vanquished. The fraudsters, much like any other competition, as we move, they move, but it has diminished it to the point where it is not near what it was during COVID. And there was literally at one point, to give you the example, when we turned on the PUA system, before we had ID.me in place, when we turned that PUA system on, many of us were in the office at that time, and we told the public we were going public at 9 a.m. Pacific time. We actually turned the machine on at 6 a.m. to make sure that it was going to roll out by 9 a.m. And by 6:05, we had 3,000 plus algorithmic fraud claims in the PUA system. So we knew we had a problem. That is not going to happen with NUI, and it's not happening now. And as long as we're here, it's not going to happen again. I can promise you that. The other type of fraud is what we call traditional fraud. When we saw fraud, that is where a person is actually working and making above the limit and not reporting it, and or just flat saying they're not working when they are. Those cases normally come up during what we call quarter change, which is when the employers report the wages for all their people, and we do cross matches to see people that said, I didn't work and I made zero, and they have wages with employers. And that's basically the load we have now, are people that were paid that did not report income.
Thank you so much. And I think you're also the same person that can answer my completely different question, Deputy Director Jordan, because I know you've answered this in the past. In light of the increase in our UI tax collection, which seems miraculous, going from 10 million to 50 million, I can't help but I always think about the UI tax rates that are being passed on to our businesses. And the one thing I didn't see this time in the presentation was whether or not we were anticipating an increase in that UI tax rate. So I was just kind of curious about that.
Deputy Director Troy Jordan, for the record, I am happy to report it will be staying the same. No further tax burden on Nevada taxpayers for this year.
Thank you so much for that. And then just my last thing was just a comment. I wanted to thank Ms. Sneed for her excitement about AB 428 work. I know I've put in a BDR to kind of address any challenges, so I look forward to hopefully sitting down with her to kind of discuss what we can do to make it better. Thank you, guys.
Senator Titus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And along the same lines as the Vice Chair's questions regarding the fraud, as someone who had somebody apply in my name for unemployment during that situation, it was really a hard time for all of us. And I was just wondering, you mentioned the 1,000 cases right now that you're looking at. Do you have any idea if anybody was ever prosecuted, and if we can ever recollect that? Has our AG done anything? Do we have any claims on that way, or is this just done, we're just moving on?
There have been prosecutions. Most of them have been federal, and they have been rings that have been multi-state, which is why the U.S. Attorney's offices handle them. In fact, I believe we just had a request to send an employee to Florida for a case that's being prosecuted there. And I know we've provided multiple pieces of information to not only AG's offices, but U.S. Attorney's offices around the country. I'm going to try to put a glass half full on the collections. When we catch them, we'll get it back. Unfortunately, many of these fraud rings during the pandemic were offshore computer mills that were immediately disassembled, so it will be a Herculean task.
Right. Well, thank you for that, and thank you all for all you do. You're, in my mind, a breath of fresh air sitting at the table, as organized as you are, as competent as you are, to all your directors. So thank you for being here today.
Assemblymember Brown-May.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. My question is really for Administrator Ellis with regard to the VR money. On slide 14, Administrator, you talked about the formula grant that we have. I'm wondering if you could provide a little more clarity around the money that we return to the federal government because we don't have state match. It looks like that's decreased year over year. So first I want to say congratulations. But I'm wondering is there a structural deficiency that perhaps we can address? I know timing of the federal fiscal year is different than state fiscal year. Is that an implication? Can you just provide more clarity?
Thank you, Assemblywoman Brown-May. Jocelyn Ellis for the Administrator of Rehabilitation Division, for the record. So yes, when it comes to a vocational rehabilitation grant, as I mentioned, it is a formula grant which requires 21.3% non-federal match in order for us to be able to draw down the allocated grant award. And I'll just maybe go through a little bit of a kind of how it's done day to day, and then kind of try to answer the question fully at the end. So as certain either our employees are paid or we provide services or goods to the clients, we will pay these items throughout the week, and at the end of the week, our financial management will then go on the federal government's website and provide them with the proof that we have spent this money. At that point, they will reimburse us for the part that would be the federal portion. So essentially, when it comes to our general appropriation, then almost acts like a checking account out of which we spend money, and then we kind of get reimbursed money towards the end of the week. The federal grant award is provided to us at the beginning of the federal fiscal year, and sometimes throughout, we don't always know at the beginning of the year what the full award is going to be, so that's definitely also part of the challenge. For the most part, the award does not go down. It is based on a formula which takes into account the inflation, the number of individuals with disability in the state from the census data as well. So the grant has slowly kind of ticked up in terms of what is the maximum that we would be able to draw down. At the end of the year, when the state fiscal year ends, if we are not able to, I guess, fully expend all of the general fund by the end of the year, then in some situations we may have to revert that. So that sometimes creates a problem. But for the most part, majority of our federal grant, in order for us to draw it down, has to be the non-federal portion has to be there. And for the state of Nevada, or for most vocational rehabilitation agencies across U.S., the main source of funds for that non-federal match is the general fund appropriation. So in order for us to be able to draw down these funds, we have to essentially have the match to be able to receive them. The other part some of the other sources that we can use as possible source of match is the activities in the Blind Business Enterprise Program. This is also allowable by the federal law. Some of the specific expenses, not all of the expenses of the program, but some specific expenses that support blind business operators could be used in order for us to also draw down these funds. So for us in Nevada VR, that is about 30% of our non-federal match comes from those activities in the Blind Business Enterprise Program. So I guess as we look back, we have not been able to fully draw down the award because we really haven't had the necessary match in order to draw down. Last year, in 2025, we are anticipating that they will revert only around $4 million. Usually this is done towards the end of the federal fiscal year, where we have to calculate out how much of the award can be utilized based on whatever funding we have already spent. And then we have to relinquish the funds so that other agencies, other possible VR agencies across the United States that may have fully utilized their grant can now ask for these additional funds. Our friends in California do it every single year. There's some other states that do. So we are, I guess our hope, and with this particular budget, they will definitely put us in a position where we are much closer to utilizing the full federal award. So hopefully I've answered the question.
Thank you. That was actually a really good, very clarifying answer. I just have one follow-up then. Is there a demand for your services that would be able to utilize additional job development, vocational skills development training if we had additional general fund match? I mean, it looks like 78%, right? So 78 cents of every dollar is federal for vocational rehabilitation. Do you have a demand?
Absolutely. I feel that within a number of, I guess if this is draft notes for the record, I apologize. Let me restart this. So there are currently about, I believe about 250,000 individuals with disability in the state of Nevada. There are probably about 160,000 working age Nevadans with disabilities. Not all of these individuals would be possibly folks who would come and seek the services of our agency. However, a good portion of them, or majority of them, would qualify as possibly the disability is creating a barrier to employment, and that's why they're possibly unemployed. Individuals with disability also have much lower workforce participation rates. So sometimes when we look at the unemployment numbers for individuals with disabilities, they may not seem much higher than general population, but it really has to do with the fact that they may not think that they're able to work, or that there are services out there that would get into the place of employment and remove some of those barriers. So we definitely have a lot lower participation of individuals with disabilities in the workforce. And also the unemployment for individual with disabilities is significantly higher than general population. We also have seen definitely the need for these services as the more we are doing our outreach in the community and sharing with folks the services that we provide, the number of applications seems to keep increasing, and we are not seeing a slow we're not seeing the numbers even out yet. They're still slowly starting to increase. So we definitely feel that the need for these services is going to be there. If the funds are not utilized and we don't, for some reason, get to a place where the services are not needed, then the funds would be reverted back to the general fund per the state rules.
Thank you, Administrator. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Neal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question. I have three different questions, but the first one is from page 20. So I saw on page 20, you have budget 2666, which is the Commission on Post-Secondary Education, and it has 5 employees. And so in SB 78, right, they're removing it. You have it in your budget. So why do you have it in your budget if there's legislation to move that out?
For the record, Chris Sewell, Director of DETR. When we were preparing our budget, SB 78 still had not been put out to fruition, I guess. And we prepared it in our budget, and if that does pass, then we would just probably remove it in that budget. We would be the pitcher, and they would be the catcher for that area of the budget.
Okay, so if SB 78 was to pass, the 5 employees, full-time employees, would go where?
For the record, Chris Sewell, Director of DETR, it would go to BNI.
Thank you for that. And then my next question is to Mr. Schmidt. So thank you for the data that you presented, and thank you for following that legislation, because it was my bill, and I meant it on purpose in 2017. But I wanted to break out and get into, so the data says that in the 5-year average that blacks remain at 11% unemployment. And so I really want to try to understand, like, if that's the 5-year average, why is that a consistent trend? Number one, right? And I mean, we fit into other populations, but then I noticed in Carson City that the 5-year average for blacks was 17%, which I thought was interesting, which means they're like a tiny part of the population versus in Clark County. So can you discuss that?
Thank you, David Schmidt, for the record. To the senator's point, the data that we use at more than a county level has to be a 5-year average, and this data comes from the U.S. Census Bureau. So the most recent data that we have is the 2019 to 2023 average at the state level and in Clark County in particular. I think part of the impact that you're seeing is that this period includes 2020 and 2021. And so the significant hit that the state took during COVID is still a part of these averages. Even though there's more years post-COVID than including COVID in that average now, we still have the 35% unemployment that Clark County experienced at the peak of the recession being included in their overall. And the service sector in particular was particularly impacted by the recession. So I think that's a part of the trend. But all of that aside, if you went back to pre-COVID numbers, you would see the same trend. You would still see that there are groups that tend to have higher participation, including the black population. For Carson City, I would treat the number with a little bit more of a grain of salt, just because in the north it is a smaller share of the population, and so there is more margin of error in the data. But where you have people that have lower levels of education on average, that also has a huge impact. So I think there's kind of a cross of different things that are taking effect. If you have looking at our data by education right now, people who have some college or a bachelor's degree or higher in the most recent 12 months in the state have unemployment rates that are roughly down over the year. Where we've seen that increase in unemployment over the past year is people who have a high school degree or less than a high school degree. And so the impact of education on the unemployment rate also very high. We have actually seen at the state level a decline in the black unemployment rate. But the reason that we use the census data instead of that state average data is the monthly unemployment rate data that we get is only about 800 households in the state. And when you drill down to even a group as large as the black population, you might have 5 households in the state that get picked up in the survey. And so the data can swing a lot more. And I know I'm kind of talking in a circle. I wouldn't be an economist if I didn't.
Yeah.
But age, education, industry that people work in, there's a lot of intersecting impacts there, I think is the point that I would make there. And so I think the value of this report and trying to make it a local context is to see what's the impact in a particular community, in a particular area, not just what's happening in the state, but what's happening here. Because we also then have the ability, and have been producing reports to this impact, to say, in this area, how can what's the population look like? Who are the people that we're trying to serve so that you can have the most targeted services possible available? And so I think that's where data and numbers helps to translate into what can the department do to provide better services there.
Thank you for that. So when you said that there's been a slight decline, what's the percentage of that decline, right? Because you also said pandemic, pre and post, but then when you look at other groups that are 6.9% pre and post pandemic and 7.1% pre and post pandemic, some other groups have recovered. So when we talk about this intersection of, I guess, correlative factors, how are we, this probably wouldn't be a question you would answer, but in terms of strategy, right, how are we working around and diving in to reduce the impacts in our strategy for unemployment reduction, right? Because Owen is housed in Dieter, and Owen also has a place, I believe, they're somewhat affiliated with the governor's workforce sitting there. There are these subcommittees that work on populations. And so it was worrisome to me because if the 5-year average is showing a consistent trend pre and post, then it's a larger question on targeting. It's a larger question on work that is actually being done, right? Because the whole purpose of AB 354 in 2017 was the language mandated that all entities work together in order to reduce the unemployment numbers. So either it is occurring or it's not, yes?
For the record, Chris Sewell, Director of Dieter. Yes, it is occurring, and I think with the direction that Owen is reformulated, going back to how it was originally formulated under Governor Sandoval, I think is going to help quite a bit. But one of the things that we've helped, and with Dave's help on producing those reports, is we want to be in those neighborhoods to serve that section of the population, and that's what we're doing. We've opened up 3 NV hubs in North Las Vegas in that area. And those hubs not only house Dieter, but they house our rehabilitation division. They house individuals from HHS. So we are actually using Dave's data and targeting those areas. And that's just one example of targeting that area. And we want to work with businesses, chambers, wherever we can go and target that area. And that's why one of the things that we're, under the current leadership at Dieter is we're reaching out to those so we can target that area. One of the biggest issues that the Governor's Workforce Development Board a report that was produced by the Governor's Workforce Development Board was on childcare. Childcare is a huge issue. Huge issue. And that's one of the reasons why we're involved with ANSHI on helping to, help pay for people that want to get into being in that employment field and paying for that training at some of our ANSHI institutions. And that's just we're scratching the surface. We need to figure that one out, and we're working on it. But that's how we use that data from Dave, and we're targeting those populations.
Thank you for that. I mean, if I don't bring it up, then I'm not representing and constantly pushing forward intent of legislation that I felt very strongly about, and it was actually bipartisan. And so that leads me to my final question. So in your presentation at the beginning, you said there is a new NERC administrator. And so what happened to the last administrator?
Oh, test. Okay, light doesn't work. For the record, Chris Sewell, Director of DETR. The governor appoints the NERC administrator, and the governor removes the NERC administrator. That is not an appointment by me. And so you would have to ask the governor on those reasons. The governor has not appointed a permanent NERC administrator. Ms. Perez is the acting administrator for NERC right now. And so she's here in case there's actual detailed questions concerning NERC.
Oh, thank you, because I do have small detailed questions. So she was the prior administrator was the administrator for 10 years. And when I went back and I started to look at okay, was there something going on in the office? Was there issues? And I started to look at the minutes, and it looked like in 2016, NERC closed 756 cases and was credited by EEOC for 713 cases. There was that gap of 48 cases rolled over to 2017, but the closure of those cases was 2.14 million because EEOC actually credits closures. Then I went and I looked and I said, okay, in 2017, they settled 1.4 million cases, which not 1.4 million cases, they settled the amount of 1.4 million, meaning that the accrued, that settlement account was credited back to the NERC department. Then in 2018, they closed 693 cases, and then they were credited $1.4 million in those closed cases from EEOC. Then in 2019, they got a credit for closing 195 cases of 206 cases for a credit of $576,000. And then in 2020, they settled over, she had listed, it was about $2.5 million in cases that were credited back to the departments despite the pandemic. Then in 2021, they received $511,000 in fees from the EEOC for closed cases. And then in 2022, there were 1,342 complaints, 809 had merit, 550 were closed for credit that represented $2.46 million that came back to Nevada. And so it begged the question for me that if this prior administrator was there for 10 years and had been effectively bringing money back to Nevada, had been effectively working with the EEOC, where the EEOC, the federal level, was crediting the state back, and we were getting money that was adding to their budget, that was offsetting how much general fund needed to be given, she seemed to have been effective. So I was wondering why a person like that would be removed from a position and then replaced or not have a replacement. And so, because this lag in administrative folks has made me not want to send folks over to NERC because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how their case is going to be managed. At the federal level, EEOC is in crisis. And so I'm trying to figure out where we're at in regards to representing and making sure that the rights of Nevadans who have issues with sexual harassment, who have issues with racial discrimination, who are coming because in 2017, whistleblowers were put under NERC, that if a false complaint was put in your employee file by a local government, they cover that too. Where are they seeking a remedy, and who is managing that remedy?
For the record, Chris Sewell, Director of DETR. Again, I don't appoint the NERC administrator, and that would have to come from the governor on why the termination. But I can tell you, the acting administrator, Patrice, sitting next to me, can explain, because she's worked there for numerous years, on how it's going now and how she's handling those cases to make sure that we don't miss a citizen of Nevada that has an issue. And we need to be timely. We need to make sure those cases are done. So I'm going to let her go through some of the things that she's seen and how she's preparing to make sure that happens.
Good morning. For the record, Patrice Perez, Acting Administrator for NERC. So I've been with NERC since 2013. I started as a compliance investigator. I moved on to a supervisory role as a supervisor compliance investigator. I was then made a chief compliance investigator, and since mid-October have been the acting administrator. So we are working very hard and moving our cases. So some of the issues that you were talking about the 1.5 million, so those are cases that are settled usually through mediation and or through conciliation. So when a case, if we do find probable cause on a case, it then goes to the conciliation process, and we try to settle that to just avoid litigation, and sometimes many of those cases can be settled. So when you talk about settlements, we do have cases that get settled at the mediation level or conciliation level. The cases that we close, that's the money that we do get from EEOC on our employment cases. So for instance, I believe that it was about 520 cases that we just presented that were closed between October of 23 to September of 24, and we got, I believe it was about $450,000 from the EEOC to cover that. And that's the money that we got for those closures. So the money, that 1.4 million, is not what we got from EEOC. That just represents the amount of money that we got for Nevadans, back to Nevadans through mediation and or conciliations.
Thank you for that, because I appreciate you putting the 23, 24 numbers in the record. I am interested in how cases that walk through are being managed. I heard in December or early part of January that there was an issue with the EEOC and a conversation around the confidentiality of files. And this was also my legislation in 2013, where I put the wall between administrators and NERC on purpose, and that there was an admonishment email potentially sent down from EEOC around the auditing of files and whether or not, some kind of confidentiality had been breached. Are you aware of that?
Patrice Perez, for the record. I am not aware of any type of breach. I know that we've kept our confidentiality, so we do not give any information to DETA or to auditors as far as case names or any information like that. I do have an understanding that we recently were advised that the numbers, the only information or case numbers that we can give are the ones that are generated by NERC. But anything that comes from EOC and case names, that remains confidential.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next on my list, I have Speaker Yeager.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. Hopefully they'll be quick. First, I just wanted to say I really sense camaraderie and teamwork with this team. It's clear to me that you really like each other and you support each other. And so kudos for setting up that kind of culture. We don't always see that, so I wanted to say that at the outset. A couple quick questions. Number one, I had a constituent recently tell me they tried to go into a DETA office in Las Vegas and the office wasn't open or they couldn't drop off whatever it was that they had. So could you just, are your offices open for folks to come in and drop things off? Because maybe they might have gone to the wrong person. I just wanted to make sure that you are open for business for folks to be able to come in and drop documents off.
For the record, Chris Sewell, Director of DETA, yes, our offices are open for anyone can come by and drop off documents. As a matter of fact, if need be, they can even drop by one of the Employee NV Hub. They can drop documents there, and that's probably an Employee NV Hub that could be in their neighborhood to make it easy. But yes, we're open for business. I believe you also had a question last week concerning that, with the governor's mandate of working in the office. I can tell you all of our Employment Security Division personnel are working in the office. So that, they're all working in the office. I do have, and I'm going to be transparent like I've always said, I'm going to be totally transparent. I do have a percentage of individuals working in our Bureau of Disability Associates that are on a hybrid schedule. And the reason for that is the NUI system. And I need to move a part of the call center out of our St. Louis division office to the new campus because there's a call center building set up for that. But I can't move them now because they're part of my testing unit. They sort of work the phones and do testing and split that. So when I'm able to do that, then I'll be able to bring in that hybrid from our rehabilitation division. But they're generally in the office 3 to 4 days a week.
Great, thank you. I might just gotten bad information from that constituent, or maybe they went to the wrong location, so I appreciate knowing that. And Madam Chair, if I could ask one additional question. I'm not sure, we had sort of breaking news happen here during this hearing where the federal government apparently rescinded their memorandum from yesterday relating to cuts. And, I don't know if this was shameless political theater to cause chaos and confusion. That's certainly what it's done. For our sake, I hope that's what it was because, 37% of our budget, and I'm looking at your page 5, 47% of your budget is federal funding. And so hopefully this isn't going to come back, but I have a sneaking suspicion that we're going to get some updated or revised memorandum in the future that perhaps would be more targeted than what was put out yesterday. But so I guess my question is this, it's an ever-changing situation, but between what happened, I guess, on Monday night and what happened an hour ago, did you guys get any sort of indication that any of the federal money that you get was going to be paused, frozen, cut? If you could just sort of speak to that, because I look at your budget and it looks to me about $175 million a year comes from the federal government. So that's a huge concern for us if that's going to go away in some fashion.
For the record, Chris Sewell, Director of DETA. Yesterday was interesting. Let's put it that way. I've worked 33 years in public service, and I love it. But I have good days and bad days, and Yesterday was not a good day. But to answer your question, where we draw down from the federal government did shut down yesterday morning. And it was a concern. It was opened up around noon our time. And we made sure that we did get, we were making draws to get ahead of the situation. And we've done that. I can also tell you that when it comes to the unemployment insurance side, our trust fund, as you can see by what Dave said, is very healthy. So that won't be impacted, and we could actually pay unemployment insurance with that. The problem is the grant that supports that is the administrative grant. So we have to watch that carefully. Now, on the other hand, unfortunately, we do this a lot at Dieter. Every time we get threatened with a government shutdown, Deputy Director Marhevka and his FM staff pull out the spreadsheet and they put together all the numbers and says, all right, ESD can last 30 days or 45 days or 90 days. If the government shuts down, this division can last, 15 days. And unfortunately, we have a division here called Bureau of Disability Associates and Rehabilitation, 100% federally funded. And they don't really have any wiggle room, so they're the first one that has to close if there's a shutdown. We do this every time that's threatened. So we're very good at it, unfortunately. And that's a sad point, but it's what's happened in today's modern political, I guess theater is a good word. So we're ready for it. We watch it. Yesterday was a very tense day. But we're able to, and we're getting ahead of it. And so we're going to keep an eye on that daily.
Great, thank you for that response. And obviously, sorry you had to go through that. I think all of us were scrambling and had constituents reaching out. And, that's why, unlike a government shutdown, this was, a budget decision. And so, again, I hope we've seen the last of this. I don't think we have. And so if you can just keep us updated, because we are very concerned not just about the budget, but about what this means for the Nevadans that you all serve and every other state agency serves. So let's keep in constant communication since we're in a legislative session. Obviously, finding another $350 million to supplement the federal funding would be very problematic for us, given the budget that we received. And then just no question here, but another concern that I have and that I just want to flag, I'm sure it's already on your radar, but if the federal government comes back and decides to cut off some of this, they're calling it grant funding, I think we may have a lot of folks who are employed in our nonprofit sector who are going to be lining up at your door for unemployment. We heard concerns yesterday about nonprofit directors not sure if they were going to be able to pay their employees. Again, I hope this was just chaos and confusion and some kind of political theater, but in the case that it's not, I'm happy to hear that the unemployment system is up and working in a way that it hasn't. Again, I hope this doesn't happen, but it very well may if that federal funding gets cut off for our nonprofits. We are a state that depends heavily on the nonprofit sector. So not only would that devastate the services sector, but you talk about people who are going to be lining up for unemployment because they're no longer going to have jobs. So just be on the lookout for that. And again, we'll cross our fingers and hope that this is nothing more than just what it is, but we need to be ready for it.
If I can just answer for the record, Chris Sewell, Director of Dieter. We're on the lookout for any businesses or anything along those lines, whether they're for-profit or nonprofit, that end up closing. We have our rapid response units out of our workforce division that are ready to act immediately. As a matter of fact, we acted when the Mirage closed, we acted with the Mirage and we worked through that whole thing and made sure that people got hired somewhere else or along those lines. But we will work with the nonprofits if that does happen. I'm holding my breath, but if that does happen, we will definitely be ready and help those nonprofits.
Great. Thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for the time, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the questions and the comments. You mentioned the nonprofits and the for-profit companies, but the ones you didn't mention are the state employees. If this does come back in any iteration, when I when you look at the budget and the cuts, the money that comes in from the federal government to the state of Nevada, and if there's cuts that are made, then we as a body and every division will have to look at that, and there will be cuts from our employees. So when you talk about those numbers going up for employees from nonprofits in the private sector, there would be employees from the public sector as well. So just wanted to get that on the record. Next up, we have Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, and thank you for the presentation. And I'll just say thank you for the rebirth of Dieter, if you will. It's been a breath of fresh air to hear the presentation. One of those breaths of fresh air was Madam Executive Director. Thank you for your presentation. My question is for you on Owen. Really quick question. Hopefully, it'll be a really quick answer. On AB 428. You just kind of renewed my excitement about it and talking about it. And I really appreciate the fact that you're having monthly meetings with the parties that you mentioned. But it's really good, and I know this, that it's and I know you're located in the South, but I'm wondering, are there other parts of the state that take advantage of this, that can be involved in this, especially from the educational standpoint, the rurals or in the North or anything like that? Any conversation around expanding that?
Marshall Sneed for the record. Yes, AB 428 is a statewide initiative, and so our focus is not just on the South, it's on the North as well. We're looking at colleges like Great Basin that actually has internships they're forming with Lithium Americas and internships and college programs that they're implementing to ensure that there are internships up north. So yes, that program is a statewide initiative, and we're not just focused here in the South. We're working with NSHE, Department of Education, to ensure that the program is statewide.
May I have a quick follow-up, Madam Chair? Thank you so much. And thank you for that. I was speaking specifically about the monthly meetings, or like we have the Clark County School District, very much should be. Are there other districts that can be involved in this as well?
Right now, the actual bill calls for Clark County CCSD. We are working with NDE to see what other school districts and identifying what other departments or agencies we can bring on board. The monthly meetings, though, are specific to CCSD right now, NDE, NSHE, and the Treasurer's Office, because those are the entities that have been called out on the bill.
Okay, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, and thank you for what you do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next up, we have Assemblymember Torres.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation and taking a lot of questions from the committee today. I had a couple questions building off of what Senator Neal was discussing in regards to NERC. So the director is probably going to have to help us out here. But I just want to understand a little bit more about the confidentiality and how NERC is able to maintain confidentiality while still reporting to the director of Dieter and then obviously to the executive. So how does that play out, or what policies exist to ensure there is that confidentiality?
For the record, Chris Sewell, director of Dieter. I'm walled off. I cannot see anything inside of NERC. What NERC provides for case numbers is aggregate. So they're doing X number of cases a month or X number of cases a year. Their contract with the EEOC is X. This is where they're, each month, this is how many cases we're doing, so we're this close to the contract or we're going above contract. I cannot see, nor do I want to see, specific cases. What I need just to make sure that the division is operating is the aggregate. Are you working? Are you doing the cases? And how many cases are you doing a month? Are your employees working? Ultimately, I'm responsible for the investigators as the director, and I need to make sure that they're on task. And so I get aggregate numbers, and that is it.
Thank you. And then what policies exist, whether it be in statute or in a policy manual of some sort, that prevents just in general, political pressure from being applied to the director of NERC. I mean, the reality is that the NERC director reports to the governor. So what prevents the governor's office or the executive branch as a whole from applying unnecessary pressure on a specific case or that may have to do with the executive?
There's the state law. And at that point in time, because it's an interesting situation. I don't appoint the NERC administrator, but I'm responsible for the laws and the employees at NERC. And then I would have to step in and say, no, there is a law that says you cannot get this information. And so that is the first line of defense. And I know one of the things the acting administrator Perez wants to do is actually, update the policies so that way it's we need to get it updated, and we need to get it in bold, large print. No, you do not get case files, and I can tell you that, and I will tell you that if and I'll say it. I always get told you I'm going to be transparent. If the governor told me to get a case file, no. That's the bottom line. I started in law enforcement. That was a long, long time ago. I had nice brown hair, no gray hair, and I started in law enforcement, and that's a law. We don't break that law. And I would tell the governor, no.
Thank you. I guess I just have some concerns because the NERC director is working under the governor's office and is also the governor's office, and the governor is responsible for the appointment of the NERC director, whether they be the acting director or the long-term director of that office. And I do think that does create some type of conflict as well. And then also for that NERC office to then be within your office too, which I'm sure is an additional challenge because I'm sure you don't have enough to do. So it just adds more to that already full plate. Earlier you mentioned when in your discussion with Senator Neal, the need for the NERC office to be timely and not missing cases. And I'm just wondering if that has been a challenge in the past and what specifically created that challenge.
Chris Sewell for the director, Chris Sewell for the record, director of DETR. COVID hit everyone hard, including NERC. Having to do cases, and when you have to change from doing in-person interviews and things of that nature to, telephonic or Zoom or Teams, it slows you down. Especially that. So it did have an effect. And I know that they are working those cases out. Acting Administrator Perez is making sure that they're on task and on time, and I have full faith that she'll continue to do that. I guess on the other side of your first part of your question would be, they're appointed by the governor, but I oversee it, and so it's sort of like a dual relationship. So and it works for the most part. But again, there's laws that prevent the breach of confidentiality. And I would stand by those.
Thank you. Next on our list, members, we only have a few more people. Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Sewell, thank you for the great presentation. And I just want to thank your staff because I have had some constituent issues, and your department has been extremely responsive. And adjudicating all the overpayment claims was quite a yeoman's task, and so I want to thank you for that. An issue we're going to hear a lot about in this session is going to be artificial intelligence, and you've embraced artificial intelligence to help you with your appeals process. I'd like you to elaborate on that a little bit. Is that going to be a fully automated process, or is this just going to be a tool? Will we actually see AI coming to conclusions for some of the appeals that you're going to be reviewing, number one? And number two, are you seeing a tick up, if you will, of fraud with the utilization of artificial intelligence, and what are you doing to mitigate that? And lastly, do you believe that any of our criminal statutes need to be enhanced as a deterrence to create fraud within your department?
Chris Sewell for the record, Director of DETR. I'll start with the first question of AI. We were approached about, well, it's almost going on a year and a half, almost 2 years, about using AI in appeals. I was hesitant. I was very hesitant. But, you know, my IT administrator had worked through a lot of the preliminary stuff. And so I gave the go-ahead. That was a sleepless night, I'll tell you, honestly. I'm a boomer. Sorry, I'm a boomer. You know, sometimes I have to call up my son. My wife works computers and she helps me, but that was a big decision. It's a secure system. It's a system that's not like ChatGPT or something along those lines. The system is secure. What is going to happen with our using AI in appeals is the referee is still going to have a whole hearing. The hearing is going to be transcribed. That transcription is then going to be sent to Google, because that's the contract that we have. And it's secured. They have to abide by all of our requirements for security on PII and everything else. So it is secured. And so the system is going to take that transcription and apply the law that we have, whether that is a state law, 612, or a federal regulation that deals with unemployment. That is all it is going to have. Then it is going to spit out basically a determination. That determination then is reviewed by that referee. If it is wrong, that referee corrects it. If it didn't include something, or they wanted to emphasize something that happened during the hearing, that referee can change it. If the decision doesn't make sense, that referee can change it. There will be no decision that goes out without human review.
Good.
After that referee reviews it, there is another individual that reviews it, and that is that chief. And they review it. This will help us on writing determinations, because some lengthy some lengthy hearings can take up to 6-8 hours to write for an individual. This is going to cut that down to less than 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. But it will be reviewed by that referee and by that chief. And the other reason why it's not up and running now and why it has been taking so long, I want it right. So does my team. We're not going to let something go, AI, that's not right. And we've pressed Google on that. And we want to get up to where it's above 99% correct. And what we're doing now is testing. So we'll take a hearing that happened years ago and feed it in there and see if it comes up the same. And when we reach that goal, then we will turn it on. Not sooner. It is going to be right. It is a tool for us. That is all. And that is what AI should be for any state agency, is a tool. Not making decisions that a human needs to make. And I think I forgot your last question, sorry.
Are you seeing a tick up of fraud with the utilization of artificial intelligence? And the last question was about our criminal statutes. Do you see any areas that are deficient that we need to enhance in a way to deter fraud within your department?
For the record, Chris Sewell, Director of DETR. I'm going to phone a friend, and also he's sort of my legal beagle as well. Troy has he's an attorney by trade, and he's been dealing with a lot of our fraud issues. So I'll let him handle that question. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, Troy Jordan, Deputy Director. The simple answer to that is, Senator Stone, yes. We're seeing an uptick. We are advancing it every day. There are different slang terms for it, but deep fakes and things like that. They're attempting it. Our fraud tools are being enhanced every day to deal with it. There's been recent things. I don't want to go into details because if I put it out in a public hearing, they know we know about it, but I can tell you that steps are being taken every day. It is basically what's an analogy I would use? Every day we move up, they try to move up, and then we move up and they move up, and it's just one big competition, and we are doing everything we can do to get ahead of it. As far as the criminal statutes, I think everybody has their own opinion on enhancements, but I would say that we do already have a statute that says anything used to enhance the benefit amount can be classified as fraud if it's done with the requisite intent. And that's pretty broad.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Assemblymember Dickman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly, I want to add to the thanks that everyone has been giving you because you've done an incredible job since you stepped in after the pandemic. But my question is quick and easy. What was that address that you said for DETR in your district that's easier than what's in the presentation?
David Schmidt for the record. It's nevadaworkforce.com, all spelled out as words, no abbreviations, /legislative-districts.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Our last question will be from Assemblymember Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I actually have a few, but I'm only going to ask two. The first one comes to from slide 23, and I believe it was information that Assistant Director Nelson provided. It had to do with the payment card program. I know in other organizations that are using these programs, these ATM cards, for lack of a better term, they also get user fees added to it. So then if they're getting $320 on this card and they charge, they do not actually get the full $320 that they're able to use. Are those user fees also part of the payment card that the client will get, or is that something that is not part of the process that the individuals using it have to worry about?
Madam Chair, through you to the Assemblywoman, Chris Nelson, Employment Security Division Administrator. So we don't know yet. We are just in the first phase of, we'll be going out to RFP on this product. And in that development, we'll figure out like what the costs are, what those kind of details are to implement such a system. And of course, fees would likely require some sort of, at the very least, regulatory work, at the very most, statutory work. So we're just in the infancy. Administrator Ellis also is here. I don't know if you can elaborate on that, but we don't know. I don't know yet.
This is Ross Nellis, Administrator of Rehabilitation Division for the record. Currently, this particular payment program doesn't, as far as the workforce itself as a whole, doesn't really exist anywhere in the United States. There's only really one program, which is vocational rehabilitation in the state of California, that has a workforce, that has this particular payment card program that has really transformed positively the way that in which they can provide customer service to clients, and has really expanded the number of vendors and places where clients can go to get certain services. So if they're purchasing books, for example, and there's a specific bookstore that only has that, for a state, it's a little bit more difficult to purchase that, because then that bookstore has to register with our controller's office, and for like a purchase of $40, it's not always something that's feasible, and we lose out on a lot of either costs where we can't get maybe the cheapest item because it's difficult, or there's just they're not accepting the types of payments which we will provide, such as purchase order and such. So this was significantly improved that, and as we've seen that idea, we thought it would, as it works in that particular workforce in vocational rehabilitation, we thought this was something that could easily work across the board, and that's essentially the direction that we wanted to go.
And I appreciate that, so thank you for that information, and I'll just say maybe you might want to reach out to the foster organizations right now that do use this, because that has been something that has been raised, is that when you're looking at that money, $112, and then it ends up being $118 because of the fees, that's a big deal. And then my other question, actually, I can just take offline, but I do want to kind of highlight, I really appreciated Director Sneed's enthusiasm, and then also, especially with the education item, that in-demand occupation chart that is on your website is excellent, and I hope that that is able to be highlighted in the different areas, and especially when you take a look at what Director Sewell had brought up earlier about trying to work with our youth earlier and earlier. So having that broken out by the different areas was wonderful. So really look forward to seeing that be elevated a little bit more. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And thank you all for all the questions and the answers and the great presentation. We truly appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you all for deeper dives, if there's such a thing, during the legislative session into these budgets.
For the record, Chris Sewell, Director of DETR. Madam Chair, I have to apologize because I think we even went too far into the weeds, and I do apologize to that for everyone, because I know your time is extremely valuable, especially with IFC this afternoon. And we do have 2 items on IFC if we want to discuss them now.
You can be short there too. All right. Thank you all. And with that, we'll close out item 3 on our agenda, and we'll move to the 4th item. It's the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Good morning. You can start whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. I'm James Settlemeyer, Director of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. With me today at the podium currently, Dominic Etchegoen, the Deputy Director, one of our Deputy Directors. And then we have Kelly, who is here to manage the slide deck. More importantly, she is the numbers guru, who I am not. So with that being said, thank you for the opportunity to present. Did you want us to go through the presentation, or in an effort to save time, do you want to just skip to questions? Just being humorous.
Not going to get off that easy.
That presentations tend to lead into questions that get stimulated, so it's always a good thing to do. Appreciate being here. As always, it's interesting to be back on this side of the aisle. since this is where I started and then went up there for some reason, and now I'm back down here. That being said, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources is made up of 8 divisions and 4 standalone programs. We have 37 grant and loan programs, and at the end of this budget, we'll be up to 822 employees. Of those 4 standalone programs, we are in the concept right now, are working towards actually making one of the standalone programs the OHV, Off-Highway Vehicle Program, merging it into, as a bureau basically, of Nevada Outdoor Recreation in order to kind of streamline processes, and they're very similar in nature. We also have 14 boards and commissions in that respect. Department goals is to protect, manage, and enhance Nevada's natural, cultural, and recreational resources for the benefit of all Nevadans and visitors for generations to come, as well as to make sure that the industries in the state of Nevada are able to utilize those resources in order to provide good-paying jobs to Nevada citizens. We're trying to improve the process, modernize and streamline our processes to improve efficiencies, increase public access and transparency, improve customer service, and eliminate backlogs. Specifically, the concepts of digitization, trying to make sure that all the information is available to Nevada citizens and industries and people that are visitors as easily as possible through the internet or through being able to answer the phones as possible, which, again, we just want to make sure that we're transparent to the public. We're also seeking to, of course, foster economic growth and opportunities, manage development of our natural, cultural, and recreational resources to responsibly increase economic opportunities throughout the state while safeguarding our natural resources. Facilitate partnerships. Partner with state, obviously other state entities, federal, local, and philanthropic entities to grow stewardship capacities. As the speaker is well aware, we've had opportunities to work with individuals who have been very kind to the state of Nevada by coming forth with resources to help us with our state parks. And it's through that kindness we want to continue, show them appreciation and love, of course not allow them to tell us what to do, but work with those funds and try to make a better situation for everyone. Our challenges. Well, we have a lot of new staff, and that's fantastic to have. We have a lot of people over the years that have hit retirement age. Unfortunately, with that comes some challenges. Onboarding and training requires significant time and resources. As many people know, sometimes even within the process you're in, by being here a second time or third, you sometimes gain a little bit better speed and abilities. So with these new staff, we're having to train them. Some of that training actually requires sending them to places like Ohio to take a federal course that is only offered once a year. And if for some reason that person decides to seek other employment, next year. And that creates some challenges for us. Continued turnover. We do have high turnover at times, which disrupts the teams, some teams more than others. Sometimes they're hired by other departments within the state of Nevada. A lot of times they're going to local municipalities because they tend to pay more money or, at the very least, pay a little bit higher PERS and PEP contribution rates, thus creating that turnover. Or to the private sector. We've had a couple that we've trained up. Next thing we know, we're working with them across the way on the other side as an industry, which is beneficial. They know our process. They understand the issues and the problems, can help them navigate it. So those are kind of understandable. We get to work with them in a different capacity. Emerging technologies. New and growing industries continue to increase our demand on services. And by that I mean concepts that we didn't think about 3, 4, 5 years ago. Maybe the concept of, I don't know, boring a tunnel all the way around Las Vegas to improve traffic. Concepts of being able to get direct lithium extraction, which is fantastic. That would prevent us, sorry to the petroleum industry who's sitting in the back, but having to use diesel fuel to ship lithium all the way to China to be smelted and then shipped back to us by diesel fuel. Doing it direct would be an immense game changer for the United States of America. But these emerging technologies require knowledge. They require us to build up and learn what they're doing and making sure that they're doing it in a way to protect those natural resources. Federal requirements versus flat funding. Increasing demands while having either flat or declining federal funds, force difficult resource allocations, and program implementations. An example of that was last year when we had a discussion of PFAS and coming forth the idea of testing it at 4 parts per trillionth. There's only 30 labs in the United States of America that could do that. Of those labs, they're at 95% capacity. So as those rules come forward, how do we deal with that? And then how do we try to help these small municipalities that may not have the resources or ability to get it done to meet those federal guidelines and timeframes? Next is our budget overall. If you look at it in 26-27, it's pretty much the same percentages. Generally, we're made up of general fund, 27%, 28% the next year. Fees, again, 28%. Federal funds, 19%. And before the question comes, we have been in contact with the governor's office and the finance office to try to figure out what this means. I agree with Speaker Yeager. It is tragic when these things occur, no matter who's in charge. I remember having it occur when Congress, when both parties were in charge, raising the concept of closure and then sending reverberations through the states. With that being said, we also have interagency transfers. These are made up when a grant potentially comes from the federal source, but then they get reallocated to a different agency, such as sometimes we have funds that come into Nevada Department of Environmental Protection, but then need to flow to the DMV. So those would be type of interagency transfers, or funds that come in, again, let's say Nevada Department of Environmental Protection, that then go to our heritage program that looks at plants and so forth that are endangered. So those are those transfers. With that, we'll go into the department position summary. If you look at this, no, I am not trying to grow the director's office by an increase of 23 personnel. What that refers to is we did a shift. We're creating our own Bureau of IT and trying to bring everybody in. We'll get to that slide deck in a second. In a second. In that respect, the major increases there are to state parks, looking for additional staff there as they are hopefully overworked per se and don't have enough staff. And it'd be nice to make sure that we have better response times to the citizens and visitors of the state of Nevada when problems arise. With that, we'll skip to the next slide deck. The Director's Office Administration, we're seeking new personnel technician for human resource support paid through our Director's Cost Allocation System, also known as DOCA. We're transferring administration officer, managing the Conserve Nevada program, and provide department-wide bond and grant program oversight to make sure that we don't get any issues of arbitrage where we owe the federal government money because we didn't spend it quick enough. Replacement vehicles for the Sagebrush team, which is run directly through the director's office. And when I saw the number of $70,000 for a vehicle, I'm like, what are we buying? This is part of the Nevada Executive Budget System called NEBS. You say you want a truck, you tell it kind of what you're looking for. We can't have a base model that's two-wheel drive to drive out into the Sagebrush system in order to examine things, so it needs to be a four-wheel drive. Due to the amount of equipment it carries, it can't be a half-ton, so it's basically a three-quarter-ton truck with a camper and a bed liner and things of that nature. That's why the larger cost versus what you see online for a pickup truck of $40,000. The team there has been working with equipment that is very beyond its excess age and mileage. We actually got it from other divisions. This would be the first new vehicle for the Sagebrush program ever. Again, due to excessive repairs and the poorly maintained and reliability of the previous vehicle. With that, next slide deck is the Director's Office of Administration one-shot appropriations. We are seeking money again from both these categories over the Sagebrush Ecosystem Program. One is for a website, one is for a database. We're trying to make this to enhance transparency for the constituents, industry, and proponents. We want to get to the point where it's very clear to them the decisions that are being made as far as the credit and debit system. So it's very transparent. They can go in, kind of run their own numbers a little bit, so they're not shocked by the numbers and have the most up-to-date information possible without having to go look for it. The Director's Office of Administration, this is where the IT reorg comes into it. We're proposing to centralize the information technology. The staff currently is dispersed across the various divisions within the department. By consolidating these IT services, DCNR plans to establish the Bureau of Information Technology Services for under the supervision of the Director's Office. This IT management will address accountability issues. It'll facilitate seamless implementation of department-wide initiatives, provide career advancement opportunities, and meet the growing IT needs. This restructuring will help us achieve these goals and better serve us and the citizens of the state of Nevada. Although the department's information technology has grown in complexity over the years, we have yet to get approval for any new IT support staff since 2014. And as we know, things have changed a little bit since 2014 in the form of IT. That's what this is seeking to do. It also solves an issue that I find disparagingly problematic in that in the previous system, we had individuals supervising other people, but because we don't have a structure, they didn't get credit for it. And that's not right. If we have employees that are supervising individuals, they deserve to be credited for that, which then would give them opportunities for advancement or increases in pay because of the job they're doing. And as we know, the IT field is fairly competitive, and we need to do our best to try to retain those individuals within the state service. So with that, I'm going to skip the rest of that and just go to the Conservation District program on the next slide deck, because I know when I sit in that seat, I don't need to be read to like a baby. So I'll try to do my best. The Conservation District program, we're looking to actually increase the grants. Currently, it's at $5,000. It's been there for, I think, 14 or 16 years. Last time it was increased was actually by me. We only did that as a one-shot one time from 5 to 10,000. What we're seeking to do is just give them a little bit more money to show them the respect that is due to them for their increased costs that they're running across and the things that are going on. 5,000 to 5,500, that totals a whole $14,000. When I was in that seat, sometimes that was referred to as budget dust, or rounding error, some people called it. But to them, it means so much. We have some districts that are barely scraping by to be able to spend that 5,000. Yet we have other districts, such as Carson Valley Conservation District that I used to be a member of, that literally matches that to the point of spending $928,000 last year. The Tahoe Conservation District that spent over $1.6, I think, million last year. Think of that match. $5,000 and you're getting $1.6 million of work out of them. Pretty phenomenal. That being said, they're also looking for a replacement vehicle. Same issue that the Sagebrush system have. It's well beyond the coded SAM codes for changing out the vehicle due to age and due to mileage. So next slide deck would be the state historic preservation. We're seeking a new historic preservation specialist, technical reviewer for both the commission and cultural centers and historic preservation and the sub grants funds. Continued historic preservation specialist. This was approved during the interim. Thank you kindly for doing that through interim finance committee. We're just seeking to obviously continue that. State parks. This is where we actually have more of the enhancements. We're seeking a new administration service officer. Allow the agency to hire a higher level ASO to address expanding complexities that the agency is currently experiencing. Went to a reservation system, as many as you know, but then that money has to be categorized, sent to each budget account for the various state parks. Before Watts gets to it, we did implement I apologize. Before Assemblyman Watts gets to it, we went through the complexities and wanted to give the data to him. Before his bill was put into effect, we had 322 veterans using the day use program. It shot up in 2024 to 1,176 with 193 tribal members. This year is very short of 2025. After all, we're barely into February. It seems like March. We're at 690 veterans so far that have applied, and 23 tribal members have applied for the free or / reduced pass ability. We're also seeking law enforcement body cam situation for situations that have occurred. Last year, as many of you know, sadly, we had a officer-involved shooting at Valley Fire State Park, which brought to light the critical importance of having these tools available to the officers. So we're also seeking new state park positions, 1 park supervisor and 8 park rangers statewide, and the associating costs that go with them. So when you add them on, they're going to obviously need equipment and things of that nature. The continuation of the reservation system, we had used ARA funds originally to set up the reservation system. It has been tremendously successful. It has reduced the road traffic on State Route 28 up in Lake Tahoe area, thus alleviating potential accidents and making a better experience for everyone involved. Also, we are seeking to fund the newly established system, again, like I said, that we're just continuing through the ARA. On the next page, we're also into more state parks. Deferred maintenance, they have actually identified over $100 million of needed repairs and improvements. This $5 million will help address some of those needs, obviously trying to focus on the highest priority ones. The equipment, as we mentioned earlier, that goes with that, making sure that they have the logos and decals on the new vehicles for the park rangers. Replacement vehicles, 70 replacement vehicles. Again, they all meet the SAM's coding. Actually, we have 216 vehicles total wide. 98 of them meet the replacement schedule. So we're just asking for 70 of what we could be asking for of 98. Also replacement of some UTVs, utility terrain vehicles that have met the end of their useful life, seeking 10 of those. Replacement excavators and skid steer tractors, which have basically become the new backhoes of the day for individuals to work with at these state parks. And with that, we'll move on. We also are going to replace a grader that's only 45 years old and kind of hard to find parts for. Water resources. Within this division, digitization staff. We wish to continue the funding of the management analyst and administrative assistant to fulfill the digitization process. What I really enjoy about this concept is transparency. The ability for a citizen to be able to go online and get the same exact data that the state engineer is utilizing to make his determination. Let them look at the same maps and the same information. To me, it's just that transparency is just so important to do. Also, it's kind of nice because it reduces the amount of weight within the building I serve in at the Richard Bryan building, and it's interesting those maps actually have put us into questions on weight loads on certain floors. The maps will be kept and then sent over to archives to be after we get them digitized, but it's also freeing up some space. Seeking a Southern Nevada manager, reclassifying a manager 2 professional engineer to a chief position to manage the Southern Nevada branch. That position doesn't require an engineering degree. This will allow us more recruitment and retention abilities. An administrative law judge, reclassifying a supervising professional engineer to an administrative law judge to better meet the division needs. What this will allow us to do in discussion with the Division of Water Resources, the state engineer, currently that's a little bit of a bottleneck, getting the administrative hearings done. This will help us work on our backlog and be more responsive to the constituency, whether it be the citizens or industries that are trying to get things done in the state of Nevada. That then takes us to forestry. We're seeking 10 position reclassifications. Over the years, we have moved away from the traditional conservation camp management position. The state of Nevada, like many other states, has seen a reduction in the inmate workers. This will strengthen the mission and ability to meet the wildland fire and natural resource management objectives. We're basically taking those old crew supervisors, putting them together and forming a team. So that's the goal there. Permitting fees establishes revenue and expenditure authority to collect the fees that can be charged and gives us the authority to actually spend that money where it needs to be spent. Employee housing, we do provide a little bit of housing within the forestry department, like at Bowers Mansion. This establishes a revenue and expenditure authority to fund the day-to-day maintenance programs for the NDFE employees, basically repairs. Forestry, continuing on. The shared stewardship, we're seeking $6 million for that. It is a leveraged federal investment to reduce the risk of catastrophic loss during a wildfire by creating and sustaining resilient landscapes, reducing fuel loads, and restoring watersheds in Nevada's high-risk areas, as identified by the interagency team of experts. Need to do nothing more than look at the news as for why this is so important. Replacement crew carriers, replacing 7 crew carriers which exceed this SAM, which again is the state administrative manual requirements, and modified for new fire and fuel crews to ensure safety and functionality of the Type 2 initial TAC crew configurations. Deferred maintenance, much like state parks, repair and maintenance of aging facilities to ensure they meet the current codes and standards for life and safety. These are more of the shops and things where we store stuff and do a little bit of work, but there's also another category, deferred maintenance, which is more for making sure things are up to code for things that are actively staffed on a consistent basis day to day. So for that, we'll go ahead to the next slide. Environmental protection, which has a lot of, it's our largest department by division rather within any of them as far as numerically and also funds. So it's rather long. Budget transfer, we're transferring the expensive assets to the Bureau of Federal Facilities, which is basically Nevada test site. We're transferring that category out to its own, so it's easier to look at, manage, and analyze. Or our new senior management analyst, the Bureau of Administrative Services to improve governmental support services, senior administrative assistant, again, looking at the Bureaus of Air Quality Planning and Pollution Control, improving the staff and program supports for those grants. New professional engineer specialists for the Bureau of Air Quality Planning, refining technical expertise in environmental management, and the continuation of the environmental scientist support person, which is the Bureau of Water Pollution Control. It leads supervision and provide adequate staffing for program management of the underground injectable control program and the on-site sewage disposal system. That program specifically, we're seeing a gigantic increase in need due to the fact that we're seeing far more look at geothermal resources, which is baseload power, so that's phenomenal. But that requires more people to make sure to look at those permits in order to protect the waters of the state of Nevada. Next page. Continuing the environmental scientist, What that one does right there is, that is the UIC program again. It needs additional staff level position to increase the pace of permitting to that related work, as I indicated earlier. As stated, the program is no longer sustainable. Currently has about 1.5 FTEs. It needs more people. From that, we go into a position reclassification for the Bureau of Water Pollution Control. It's a professional engineer that has been vacant since July of 2022. The reclass to environmental scientist is intended to improve our recruitment success. The new environmental scientist specialist will be located in Las Vegas. It will serve as a technical expert for resources for existing staff and manage more complex, high-priority environmental remediation cases that are occurring in Southern Nevada. And then we have a new management analyst, and we also, of course, have a new environmental scientist supervisor. We're looking at the resources to the Bureau for the increased efficiency in addressing growing workloads and fiscal management in that Bureau that is currently performed by an administrative assistant. And we'd like to have a higher level person managing that. The position would also supervise the two existing admin positions. We're also within the Bureau of Mining Regulation there, the E350, the new environmental scientist supervisor would allow NDEP to separate water quality protection program elements into permitting and compliance activities with a dedicated branch supervisors, which then would overall increase the performance and quality of the service to those industries. Another page on slide deck 19, I think it is, for environmental protection. We're seeking a new environmental scientist for the Bureau of Mining Regulation. That individual will have hydrology expertise in the Bureau. We have more and more mines that are increasing in size and complexity and desire to mine closer to the water table, and that's why we need a hydrologist there. The next three enhancements reflect new positions in the Bureau of Safe Drinking Water, which will support federal grant funds transferred from the Office of Financial Assistance, also known as the State Revolving Fund Program. Over the last couple of years, well, almost decade, the federal government has decreased the amount of money that has come to us on the State Revolving Fund, and the states had to kind of increase that to make sure that our smaller municipalities and larger ones are meeting compliance issues and are working well together. We'll go ahead and skip all the way to the next slide deck. Get rather to another environmental protection slide deck. New environmental scientist. This person will support several program activities under the U.S. EPA Clean Water Act. The Bureau monitors surface waters, evaluates emerging contaminants, supports the multi-agency Nevada Harmful Algae Bloom Task Force, and assesses needs for at-risk water bodies. Additional staffing is needed to support these federal grant projects and programs. The new equipment. For them, it's a new utility task vehicle, also UTV and trailer with all-season capability, allowing the program to meet the grant commitments for the ambient water quality monitoring program. The additional equipment is special analytical equipment to monitor water quality related to harmful algae bloom to help protect public and animal health. The capability will support NDEP's participation in the multi-agency Nevada Harmful Algae Bloom Task Force, which has partners such as NDEP, NDSP, NDOW, NDA, DHSS. So with that, then we go to the DCR and agencies that do not have any major budget enhancements, which you can read right there. We just want to make sure to list them so they didn't feel left out, but they are not receiving any major enhancements at this time. That then takes us to the last real slide deck, which is general obligation bond programs. Again, we have the Water Infrastructure Capital Improvement Program through NDEP, which basically is the state revolving fund working on trying to make sure that the water systems are of good quality and quantity. We also have the Lake Tahoe Environmental Program seeking funds of $23 million. Forest Health for the Marlette Lake and Spooner Backcountry, Sand Harbor Master Plan, associated EIP projects, and of course other important water quality projects at the lake. Commission of Cultural Centers is seeking $6 million. This has been an ongoing thing. What that allows them to do is to partner with people who may have historic buildings, help them rebuild those buildings, but then they have to agree to let them open to the public because, again, they are using public funds. And if you're going to take public funds, you're going to have to let the public see what was done with it. We also then have Conserve Nevada program, which has about $63 million spending. It's usually broke up like $8 million to parks, $8 million to NDOW. Brandon Bishop is here for more details on that one specifically if we get into it. And that brings us to thanking you for allowing me to make this presentation. And of course, open it up if the chair so sees for questions, but if she wants to dismiss us, we will gladly run away.
We do have a few questions. Thank you so much for the presentation. We're going to start with Assemblymember Watts.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure you're surprised Director. Good to see you again. Thanks for the presentation. I have one question for you and then one question for Mr. Bishop. So one of the things I noticed is that it looks like across a few different divisions, there were positions that were funded with American Rescue Plan dollars that are now being transitioned over. You know, I feel like in general, we have seen that in other agencies. A lot of those were, you know, one-time project costs or positions associated with kind of projects that are still ongoing and need some additional resources to get across the finish line. Looking at some of these, it seems like some of these positions are more kind of ongoing positions. And so, and I think that was something that we were trying to avoid, was running into staffing, staffing up with ARPA dollars and then needing to continue those positions with general fund moving forward. So can you just give me and the committee a little bit of additional background on that?
Chair, would you like me to go to you through your direct? Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question, Assemblyman Watts. You know, we go back to the time frame when these ARA funds were allocated out and for specific purposes. That's prior to the current governor's administration. I was with you back then. I did not like that idea. I thought it was problematic. However, it was done. And now I'm in a situation of looking at these programs that are very beneficial and trying to figure out if we get rid of the reservation system or we get rid of these various positions and thus not employing state workers for one, but more importantly, I look at them and realize they're very important to continue on as what they're providing to the citizens of the state of Nevada, such as the digitization process. I've had to kind of evolve my thinking on that just based on the situation where I'm at. And when I was in your seat, previous governor's administration, I agreed with you. We should try not to use it for the concept of ongoing expenses, but it was done. And I would like to continue to do that, to provide those resources for the citizens of the state of Nevada. However, you did specifically call Mr. Bishop, so I'll allow Mr. Bishop to answer any further.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, and look forward. We'll dive in more on some of the issues. I think there's definitely going to be some continued discussion and interest, probably even in IFC, about how we're handling the costs for wildfire fighting. But Mr. Bishop, I just had a quick question for you about the conservation bond program. Could you give us very high level what the makeup for the kind of bond allocation is looking like this session, and specifically how much of that is going to be set aside for kind of competitive grant applications?
Brandon Bishop for the record, through the chair to the assembly person. So overall, we're asking for $63.4 million for the bond programs. One thing that was made evidently clear to us from NGOs across the state is we received over 56 applications for grants. And this was a lot of money that these NGOs, local governments were looking at to do great programs in every county across the state. And in total, there were entities asking for about $20 million in grants, which would cover only a small fraction of this. But it also keeps the process competitive. Looking at the budget, about $20 million of this would be allocated towards the open grant portion of the Conserve Nevada. Right now, the overall breakdown that we're looking at is $5 million for state parks, $5 million for wildlife, $25.4 million for the Las Vegas Springs Preserve for the redo of the Origin Museum and the displays there, $2 million towards Clark County Wetlands, potentially $3 million for the Division of Museums, and this would be the backfill from the funds that were unallocated. $1 million for the Vegas Valley Rim Trail for their next planning phase, which is what they requested. And then our competitive grants, which are $20 million, and then $2 million for the Lake Tahoe Path System, which is matching for some of those federal funds coming in.
Thank you. Sounds like a lot of exciting projects on the horizon, and I think those community organizations will be very excited to hear about the additional funding opportunities that will be available for them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next up, we have Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Chair. Director Settlemeyer, good to see you and your team here. Obviously love our state parks, and to your point, was very delighted to get some outside help on the Valley of Fire Visitor Center. So the first question I had was, what is the status of the Visitor Center at Valley of Fire, and when do we anticipate that might be completed? I'm excited to see that.
Thank you. James Settlemeyer, Director of Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. For the record, with that, I will phone a friend and ask Bob McGill to step up to the plate and head out of the park as he always does.
Bob McGill, Administrator for Division of State Parks, for the record. So the most recent update is Valley Fire is moving forward on schedule. I am eligible to retire on December 15th. So it is supposed to open by December 14th. So, but kidding aside, we're hoping for a fall, early winter grand opening for that. But so far, I'm hoping there's wood in here somewhere. It's on schedule.
And we're not letting him retire until such time. Sorry,
Great.
James Settlemeyer, for the record.
Well, thank you. Thank you in advance for your years of service to the state, and I think that's going to make a world of difference at that park. And I'm still holding out hope that someday maybe I'll be a park ranger at one of our fabulous state parks. Pays better, hours are probably less than being here in the legislature. So thanks for the work on that. And then, Madam Chair, if I could ask one more question, please. So, Director Settlemeyer, appreciated your comments about we've sort of been through federal issues over the years. And I don't want to get too political on it. I think we can't change the past, and we have to deal with the future. And the future that we have now is pretty interesting because since I made my last comment when you were sitting here, we've gotten an update on what's going on with the federal government. And maybe for the first time ever, I'm going to go ahead and read a tweet into the record because this is the world we live in. So this came from the President's press secretary about an hour ago. And it says this is not a rescission of the federal funding freeze. It is simply a rescission of the budget memo. Why? To end any confusion created by the court's injunction. The President's executive order on federal funding remain in full force and effect and will be rigorously implemented. So I don't know if this is more political theater, if this is more chaos and confusion. I mean, I guess there's no need to use a scalpel when you can use a sledgehammer, but I think we are left with this very confusing state that we're in right now. And so, this has been enjoined, I think, by the courts until Saturday, and then I'm not sure what's going to happen. I don't know if we're going to get another memo. But sort of my question on all that is, you mentioned it on slide 5 about 19-20% of your money comes from federal funds, which comes out to about $85 million over the biennium. In this weird period of time we live in the last 24 to 36 hours, were you made aware of any freezes or any cuts on federal funds that were coming to your division that we should be aware of as we go through the budgeting process?
James Settlemeyer, Director of Department of Conservation of Natural Resources. I'm not aware of anything at this time that has been brought to my attention as far as the freeze. I kind of go back to my predecessor when I got in the Assembly, it was Lynn Hetrick. He told me as soon as you get elected, quit watching the TV, cancel a newspaper subscription, you'll be a lot happier. He was correct.
Yeah, thank you, Director. If you could keep us updated on that. And, I just wish we had that luxury, but when we're talking 37%, or maybe it's less than that, 1/3 of our state budget come from federal funds. So it would just be nice, I think, not just for the state of Nevada, but for our 49 sister states, if we had any idea what the heck the federal government is intending to do. Thankfully, we're in session and we've got to work through this budget, but hopefully we'll get some clarity there because we're just concerned. I mean, I'm concerned about every single division, but you're one of many departments that have come up and we have this graphs about all the federal funds. And of course, those aren't all grant fundings, those are other things. But until we get some clarity from the federal government, I think we're going to be watching the news and trying to figure out exactly what is going on. And hopefully somebody there will have the good sense to figure out what it is they want to do and communicate that clearly with the states. But my only request of you do is to keep in communication with us. Maybe you're going to hear things that we're not going to hear as the legislature, but we're going to have to get through this budget cycle together. So if you can commit to doing that, I would very much appreciate it. And with that, Madam Chair, I have no further questions, and I really would like to go to a state park now, but I think we have a full day of budget hearings.
You should check out the Ice Age Park. Just putting that plug in. I'm not seeing any other questions from any other members, so I am going to say thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you as the legislative session continues.
Thank you for your time.
And we'll have the last presenters come to the table. That will be the Department of Wildlife. Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, Alan Janae, Director, Nevada Department of Wildlife, and I have got my Deputy Director of Physical Matters, who's going to help me run the PowerPoint, Jordan Goshert, on my right. And I've got my other Deputy Director of Operations, Caleb McAdoo, on my left. Appreciate the opportunity to present to you today. We're going to try to keep it as quick as possible. I understand that you guys are very short and over your scheduled allotted time, so we will do our best to make up as our PowerPoint and our technical issues are taken care of here. You bet. And so one thing we wanted to do was kind of just get you in the right frame of mind. And so we've got a very short video to just get you in the natural resource mind. So thank you for the opportunity to show that video. We have got a great profession and we have a beautiful office that we love to share with everybody and all of our citizens. So I just wanted to take that opportunity to kind of kick that off and I guess in the sense of a happy new session next week. So hopefully we started off in the right frame of mind. So again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come present our budget today. The department's mission remains unchanged. It's to protect, conserve, manage, and restore wildlife and its habitat for the aesthetic, scientific, educational, recreational, and economic benefits to the citizens of Nevada and the United States, and to promote the safety of persons using vessels on the waters of Nevada. When you look at our department structure, we have 7 different divisions that are comprising the department, all underneath the director's office. We've got data and technology, conservation education, law enforcement, game management division, fisheries, biodiversity division, and habitat. Moving on to our agency goals, one of the big things that we're looking to do and trying to get some funding support for is implementing a centralized wildlife database. Currently, we have multiple databases, and they're not very well conjoined. You can find the data, it's just all in various locations, and we're looking to try to pull it into one centralized system so that it's very easy, and it helps us with both public records requests, but also requests from sportsmen, legislators, to be able to fulfill those goals. Other things that we're looking to do is minimize our vacancies and continue to attract high-quality applicants. I think it's no news, everybody's continuing to find and battle over good quality employees, and we continue to strive for that. One of the things you'll see later in my slides is once we get them, we keep them. And why wouldn't you want to stay with us? Because you got to see that video. We have about an 86% retention rate on our employees. And so once we get them, they love working for us, but it takes a while to attract them. So those are some of the things, many same stories as other agencies. Other goals we're looking to do is implement our sagebrush habitat plan. We've been working on that for a couple years now. One of the things that we're seeing here in the state of Nevada, despite it being our state flower, sagebrush is continuing its decline because of wildfire and annual invasive grasses, and so we have 50% less sagebrush in our state than we once did. So we're looking to try to reverse that trend, and I can give you some information on our efforts later. We're looking for the ability to provide electronic tags to our sportsmen so that that is much more modernized and they don't have to have a hard copy tag out in the hills with them anymore. There's a lot more interface that we can do with them to also facilitate their experience and you know, things like sunset, sunrise, you know, identification of species, ducks, birds, things like that. We can assist them with through that process. So we're in the process of getting that started. Other goal is to complete the Lake Mead Fish Hatchery water pipeline. As you are aware, Lake Mead was dropping, and with it, as we continued to chase the water, there was also quagga mussels in that water, and so we've been working for years to try to get that new clean water source more dependable. We now have that in the works, and that should be completed by this fall, and that'll allow us to get an endemic fish hatchery back online. When we look at agency accomplishments, as I mentioned before, our employee retention rate is about 86%. Again, they love what they do. Other goals that we have accomplished recently, if you're not aware, Cave Creek Dam near Ely is now filling. We repaired that dam, did a restoration on that at a very high expense, but it has now got that back up and it's filling, and it'll be soon. We'll be putting fish back in this next year, and the people of Nevada can be enjoying that beautiful location again. In 2024, our big game application process brought in a record number of 474 applicants. That's an all-time high. Other things that we continue to work on and continue to see success in is, as I mentioned, with the sagebrush restoration. This last year, we did 84,000 acres of habitat treatments at nearly a cost of $3.7 million to try to restore habitats in the state of Nevada. That brings our total since 2017 right at about 700,000 acres that Nevada Department of Wildlife and Partners have been putting on the ground to try to reverse that trend. One of the really cool stories of accomplishment over the last few years is we came up with an idea for a youth license fund, is just provide it for free. And so we've allowed on our big game application as people can donate funds. We've also had conversations with sportsmen's groups and county governments, and everybody has donated in to cover the $15 cost of a youth license. And so what we have seen this last year, over 10,000 youth licenses were acquired through that free process. And one of the coolest things about it is that 65% of those kids had never held a fishing license before. And so that's just tremendous. What we see was also novel. We thought it was going to be more in that 12-year-old category. And what we saw is it's the 16, 17-year-olds. It's those kids that have now got that freedom of that vehicle, and they can go do what they want, and they're taking advantage of it. So some interesting things coming out of it. The challenges NDOW faces, we are a small agency. We are very much user-derived funds, and so funding is an issue. As you can imagine, inflation's hitting everybody. Everything costs more. When you contemplate our funding mechanism, it's all user-derived funds, or majority user-derived funds. And so when you look at that, we haven't touched our fees in 22 years. And so that is very tough for us to keep up with the inflationary adjustments. So those are the things, some of this, you'll see some of our bills are trying to get to that issue. Talking about capacity and recruitment, again, employees, we need to continue to hire good employees and get them trained up and get them out in the field. Again, challenges, habitat loss and conversion, 50% of the sagebrush. Also, there's always challenges to riparian and those water areas that are never ending in the state of Nevada, where we're the driest state in the nation. So data management, as I mentioned, that's one of our goals. We're trying to get that so that we've got a centralized database. And then one of the things that is a looming threat in the state of Nevada is we are pretty much surrounded by chronic wasting disease. It is a technical term, spongiform encephalitis. It basically affects the brainstem of deer. It is spreading. It has been all over the United States. It is knocking on our door from Idaho, now this last year from California. And we are scared, but we are actively monitoring and trying to make sure that should it come into this state, that we pick it up as soon as possible and that we can react to it. So moving on to the budget, when we contemplate our funding model, as I mentioned, 98% user-derived funds. In that, as we're trying to manage nearly 900 species in one of the largest states in the nation, 7th largest state. Adding to it in that complexity is 85% federal land ownership. And then all of this with user-derived fees that haven't been adjusted in 22 years. So here we've got a table with a budget. I just wanted to give you a highlight so that you saw the numbers and you can understand what that looks like. General fund ask in 2026 is 1.58 million of our department budget of 75,596. I'll save the small numbers. Looking at a total budget of 77,176,347, and similar numbers, slightly higher in 2027 with a total ask of 78,075,689. Our current full-time employees. We have 279 full-time employees. We do hire seasonals to help us get some of that work done. Generally, it's about 50 seasonals a year. The significant budgetary ask, I guess the meat of this presentation is we are looking to try to get some additional funding for law enforcement. Our game wardens are Category 1 peace officers. They are the DMV of the sea, so when it comes to anything boating related, it's Nevada's game wardens that are the lead on those. And that means everything from patrolling for public safety to dealing with any accidents, any recoveries that happen on the water. And so we have a very strong link to the general public in that sense. Beyond that is our wardens, being Category 1 peace officers, are often called in emergency situations. You can remember back to the campus shooting down at UNLV. Our game wardens were part of those teams and very active in that process. And so Davis Fire is another example. When it came to, trying to set up and manage public access into that and dealing with that event, our game wardens were there. So we're looking for this funding to help us in this situation, to give some additional funding towards law enforcement, because the way our funding model is set up with federal funds is we have a very limited pot that we can do to support that. And when it comes to public safety things like shootings, evacuations, things like that, is if we use our sportsman's funds, it can be termed as diversion of funds, and it can put all of our other funding from federal funds at risk. And so we really need to supplement that so that we can get more support for our law enforcement. Our budgetary ask on the database, we're looking at about $1.262 million annually. We're scoping, and we've got estimates on what this is going to take based off of other state wildlife agencies' past experience, and that's about what we're looking at. Our predator management, what we got out of the last session, if you'll remember, there was a splitting of the predator fee. One part to habitat, one part to lethal predator management, and this budgetary ask will just ask that we can split those fees. Last year was the first year that we did that. We asked the question to every applicant in the draw, and 66% chose lethal, 36% chose habitat or research. And so that created a novel pot of habitat and research of approximately $373,000. So that'll be something that'll be rolled out this coming spring as far as what those projects will be funded with that. Other things we're looking for is we're looking for a construction project coordinator 2. This will be a new position placed in the eastern region. Things that we have been trying to do is put more emphasis on our maintenance of our facilities, and this is the right size person in the right place. And so we're trying to put one in each region. We have 3 regions of the state, and so we're looking to put one in each corner of the state so that we can manage those facilities. And then if you look at the next position we're looking for, that's a construction project coordinator 2. That's a reclassification of a maintenance repair worker 2 in Southern Nevada. Again, given the complexity and the responsibilities of those positions, that's what we think is the proper sizing of that position. Other enhancements we're looking at are small things, more organizational, moving boating safety enforcement education from our law enforcement division into our conservation education division, because they're much more that education, public information piece of our agency. And so that'll gain some efficiencies in having them kind of multitasking on that effort. Another transfer request is taking the technical guidance program from the Habitat Division to the Biodiversity Division. Technical guidance is kind of where we play into the federal agency's NEPA process, National Environmental Policy Act process, for all of those projects that occur on public lands that must need that approval. This is where we weigh in so that we can inform project proponents and federal agencies of possible impacts to wildlife. And so by moving it underneath the Biodiversity Division, we can get a few more people working on this project, but it's also taking advantage of some expertise that lays within that division. As far as agency bills, what we've got is Senate Bill 79. This is a bill that we're looking to revise the provisions so that it would allow the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners to prescribe by regulation our fees, those tags and license fees. but it would have some constraints as far as legislatively defined inflationary thresholds. And then Assembly Bill 59 is what we would term our cleanup bill. It'll clarify that game wardens enforce all Nevada revised statutes and that they are state peace officers. Currently, it's just that there is some verbiage in there, old verbiage of they will enforce Nevada's laws while, enforcing the chapters, which are the Nevada Department of Wildlife. And so that's an archaic reference, and so we're just looking to clean that up and make that clear. Additionally, it'll add rabies vector species to, it'll make it illegal to intentionally feed them. What we see is we've got issues in Las Vegas with people feeding coyotes routinely. And currently we have no process to be able to enforce when they do that. So we're cleaning that up. Additionally, we're looking to add language that excrement or bodily fluids from cervids, what you see is they use doe urine for cover scent for hunting. It's a trend that's more whitetail related, but sometimes you'll see it come into data. There's no way that we can confirm that it's not chronic wasting disease contaminated because it can be transported in bodily fluids. So this will outlaw that. And then finally, one easy one is it revises an antler point definition to bring it into agreement with all the other things that we have on the landscape, which is that the first point on a mule deer buck is just an eye guard and is not the first point. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation, but thank you for the video. I think that's a highlight for the day. So we're going to start the questions with Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here. And again, I'm very excited about your accomplishments, especially the Cave Creek Dam, which has been fantastic fishery, so hopefully we'll get fishing that quickly. On that same page, though, that 474,534 tag applicants, that's not additional hunting or fishing license, right? That's just people applying for big game tags?
Yes. Thank you for the question, Senator Titus.
So how about the actual hunting and fishing license? Was there a significant, in order to get a tag, you can apply for a tag and not necessarily get a license, and you can say, hey, I only want the license if I'm successful. Did you see a significant increase in those that actually got licenses also?
I think our numbers this year, last year we were up, and I think we held that trend is that we continued, we're bucking the average. Nationally, what you see is you're seeing a decline in the number of license holders. I believe we've been on this trend since COVID. COVID, it was called the COVID bump. Everybody wanted to get outdoors, and most of the states saw an increase. Nevada is one of the few states that has actually continued that trend in growth on number of licenses. So I know we're continuing that so far.
And when we get into, follow up on all that, and when we get into the subcommittee hearings, we'll see some data on the income from the additional licenses and the income, because there's a tag application fee, because I know I apply for a tag every year. Having said that, what about, did you increase the actual number of tags available? Significant concerns about the loss of habitat, the loss of actual populations?
So thank you for the question, Senator Titus. And so when you contemplate number of
You have to state your name for the record again every time. I'm sorry.
Thank you. That's all right. For the record, Director Alan Cheney, Nevada Department of Wildlife, is that when you think about that question of number of tags, it's very much by species, as you know. And so when you contemplate mule deer was slightly up last year. Many of the other species were, like elk. Elk, I believe, was up at a higher number. Probably one of the biggest things that affected the number of applications that we received last year was our moose tags. 2 moose tags. I'm trying to remember the number off the top of my head, but I may have to phone a friend. I think it was 20,000 different individuals put in for
I know, I donated to the
tags.
cause. I donated to cause. I put my application in, and that was really 2 applicants, but we all were willing to jump in for that. And final, really quick question, because I'll need more details on the number of species in the subcommittee, and at another time, we'll get into those, literally into the toolies as opposed to the weeds.
You bet.
Sage grouse habitat. And nobody has mentioned that, and I know earlier with Director Settlemeyer, I was going to ask that question, and just kind of got past me on any information on sage grouse habitat, and are you participating in any of that with the habitat restoration? Where are we with the species, and if that needs to be in the subcommittee, great, but that's a big issue that we're not hearing about.
For the record, Alan Janae, Nevada Department of Wildlife. And so, replying back to you, Senator Titus, is that, yeah, we are, when I referenced that 84,000 acres, much of that is sagebrush habitat. And so it's everything from fire impacted to pinyon juniper thinning, where pinyon juniper is encroaching into sagebrush habitat. But we can come with that information as to what we have done. That's also in that grand total of, nearly 700,000 acres since 2017. Nevada Department of Wildlife, I would say we are probably second in the nation as far as habitat restoration efforts, with only Utah, who has a very intensive program over there, exceeding us.
Well, thank you for that, and I will be very interested in hearing what the ongoing negotiation with the sage grouse and those issues and the listing, et cetera. I think it's critical, and thank you, Madam Chair, for the question.
Thank you so much. Assemblymember Watts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the presentation. Really excited about some of the things that you've done, some of the things that we have ahead of us, particularly interested in some of the proposals to address the erosion of funding sources due to inflation. I think we've seen in so many areas across our state, our revenue sources have structural issues that are not able to keep up. And so look forward to continuing that discussion. I have a couple of questions. One, you noted the issues with recruitment and retention. I was wondering if you could, I believe last session in your agency and many other agencies, one of the areas where we particularly had difficulty was with our law enforcement officers. So if you could just kind of talk about, at a high level, I don't need the rates for every division, but kind of where are things at? Have they been improving? And is it still with our game wardens where NDOW is having some of the biggest issues with vacancies, recruitment, retention?
Thank you for the question, Assemblyman Watts. Alan Janae, Nevada Department of Wildlife, for the record. So when it does come to our current employee vacancy rate, is we're about 13%. We're improving, I think, last time when we were in session, and don't hold me to it because I know there's record of it, but I think we were thinking it was about 23, 24% at the last session. So we've done a very good job. The changes that occurred in the last sessions in salaries, that definitely helped that situation. When it comes to law enforcement, I would say that we are seeing greater opportunity in that. We're still not fully, staffed within the law enforcement division, but what we have seen is we just had a cohort of hires that were, 6 strong. And so that's a really strong class. Unfortunately, I believe at least one of them dropped out as they got into post, but even still, as if we can continue, 5-person cohort as a hiring pool moving forward, that's getting us a lot closer. And so I can absolutely come back with the exact numbers on that for you in the future.
Thank you. I think that's helpful context for us to have. One of the things I also wanted to ask about, when you mentioned the proposal to fund some of the law enforcement activities using general fund dollars, and I know on the slide deck there's a picture of a boat on there. You mentioned boating a little bit, but could you just talk a little bit about that more to for the education of me and the committee about, particularly, we've got Lake Tahoe, Lake Mead. Can you talk about the work that NDOW wardens and officers are doing on those water bodies that is not enforcing kind of like our fishing laws?
Thank you again for the question, Assemblyman Watts. Again, for the record, Alan Janae, Nevada Department of Wildlife. Yeah, I love, it is the one place where when you talk to the general public, they have no concept that Department of Wildlife, we're out there, we have life jacket stations at most reservoirs where people who forget their life jacket, which is an absolute crazy sin. But when they arrive is we try to get them so that they have a flotation device in their vessel. Because it's one of the most important things they do. But we are out there, you can consider, Lake Mead, Mojave, the river, Colorado River, Tahoe, all of these waters in the state of Nevada. People are out there, skiing, water skiing, tubing, screaming around on jet skis, having a great time. That's what we enforce, is all of the safety associated with boating, the registration of those vessels. As I say, we are the DMV of the sea. But when things go bad, we're also the ones that are leading that whole process. And so, we've had many of our wardens rescued for water emergency rescues, but also when it comes to investigations and, terrible things happen and we have to follow up and investigate and conduct and cite. We are also in that same standard. And so, but it is the one place that when people are playing on the water, they really don't think it's a state game warden. And yeah, when we roll up, especially to people from other states, is you kind of get a little bit of wide-eyed at like a game warden on the water. Why don't you go check a fishing license? No, we have sole responsibility for all watercraft safety.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And again, I think it's just worth noting. I know one of the other activities that people get up to on the water is drinking as well, which is an issue. But I think it's important that we all understand that that the department's activities out on the water are saving lives. So, last question I had is about bears in the Lake Tahoe Basin. I know this was a topic of conversation last session as well. So again, if you could just talk a little bit at a high level of kind of where things are at, because I know there's lots of wildlife community interactions and talks of how to try and address that. So if you could just give us a quick update.
Yes, thank you again for the question. For the record, Alan Janae, Nevada Department of Wildlife. So yes, Tahoe Basin is a special place. There's a very large population of black bear that live in California. Tahoe Basin is contiguous habitat, it's got the same type of habitat on our side of the line as it does in California. And so those bears don't know the difference when they're walking down the road and when they cross the line. And so we have a population of bears that occupy that basin and come down the Sierra front and even extend over into the Pine Nuts near Gardnerville. And so the population within the basin is an unhaunted population. We don't issue tags in there, but as you are aware, there are a lot of millions of people annually that love to show up to the Tahoe Basin and recreate and stay, and they stay in little VRBOs that they don't care or concern themselves with trash management. And so you have various refuse that is in various states of storage. Sometimes people leaving doors open. Bears are very good at smelling and also finding any good food source, especially when it comes to fall and they're contemplating hibernation. And so they take advantage of those opportunities, and we have everything from trash conflicts to breaking into houses to breaking into cars. Luckily, on the Nevada side, we haven't had any major conflicts of injury, but yeah, it's one of those things when you have big animals like that in these kind of conditions where they can get into houses, they can get into automobiles, as we continually to try to educate the public as to the risk of that so that they can help bears protect themselves. And so that's pretty much what we do within the basin, but we're absolutely almost every day. And when it hits winter, we pray that they go to bed, but oftentimes they take their sweet time on years like this when there isn't much snow, and we can find ourselves in the middle of winter playing with bears as well.
Thank you. Our final question will come from Speaker Yeager.
Thank you for the time, Madam Chair, and thank you for that video. It was a great reminder of the wonderful state we live in, and I think it brought my stress level down quite a bit, so thanks for that. The question is just on your slide that talked about your funding. Obviously, about 46% of your funding comes from federal sources. I calculate that to be about $35 million a year in this time of confusion and chaos in terms of what the federal government is doing. Did you learn anything in the last 36 hours that indicated to you that any of that particular funding that you were anticipating getting in the next biennium from the federal government might be cut or paused or frozen?
Thank you for the question, Alan Janae with Nevada Department of Wildlife. And no, there hasn't been anything in the last 36 hours that has us contemplating that our funding from our federal grants is at risk. We're working with, Governor's Finance Office to review that, but when you contemplate our funding sources, we are federal excise tax derived from gun and ammunition sales, as well as fishing equipment and motorboat fuels. And so those are literally non-competitive grants. So when you contemplate the impact of the Nevada Department of Wildlife, I can't foresee it, but we are watching and we are ensuring that we're apprised as soon as we see any contemplation of impact to us, but don't expect it.
Great, thanks so much, and please just let us know if that changes, and thank you for the time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And seeing no other questions, I thank you for being here today. Look forward to the next video as we go through the legislative session. We appreciate your being here today.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
And members, that takes us up to the last item on our morning agenda, and that is public comment, the second opportunity for public comment. If there's someone here in Carson City that would like to make public comment, I invite you to the table. Remember that there's 2 minutes. We will have the timer on for 2 minutes for public comment. If you'd like to call in, the number is 888-475-4499. The meeting ID number is 869-808-734795. Again, that's 869-08-734795, and then please press pound. If there's anyone in Las Vegas that would like to make public comment, I invite you to the table there. We will start here in Carson City, go to Las Vegas, and then to our phone lines. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairs and members of the subcommittee. My name is Jane Amon, and I'm the Nevada External Affairs Director at the Nature Conservancy. I'm here to offer a supportive comment about the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and the Nevada Department of Wildlife. Both of these agencies provide critical oversight, management, and coordination for Nevada's lands, waters, and wildlife. We appreciate the work that they do every day to help conserve and manage Nevada's invaluable natural resources. I also want to highlight an important source of conservation funding that is included in the DCNR budget, the Conserve Nevada program, which is funded by general obligation bonds. The conservation bonds are critical for Nevada's communities. They support programs to plan and prepare for drought, provide recreational amenities so that Nevadans can enjoy the outdoors, fund projects to heal and restore fire-scarred and other degraded landscapes, and enhance resiliency for the people and nature as we face increasing heat and drought conditions in our state. We are pleased to hear that $20 million is allocated for the Competitive Grants Program. In 2019, AB 84 approved a $70 million for funding authorization for the Competitive Grants Program, yet to date, only $2.5 million of this important fund has been authorized. Of course, we also heard that the Conserve Nevada Bonds program support work for other things. In total, AB 84 authorized $219 million for conservation bonds, And we really appreciate that this program supports work at NDOW and Nevada State Parks, and these funds are important for recreational amenities and facilities at Clark County Wetlands Parks and the Springs Preserve, as well as supporting construction of the Lake Tahoe Bike Path and the Las Vegas Valley Rim Trail. So we're excited to see more funding for this program. The Conserve Nevada program is critical to maintain Nevada's unique natural resources, rich culture and history. And we thank you for considering our comments today as you hear presentations about DCNR and NDOW budgets. Thank you so much for your service on this committee.
Thank you. Seeing no one else here at the table in Carson City and no one at the table in Las Vegas, we will go to the phone lines. Do we have anyone joining us on the phone that wish to make public comment at this time?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
For the record, Fred Volz. Some may remember vetoed SB 88 from the 2023 legislature. It called for a review of all natural resource agencies for potential duplication, genuine fulfillment of statutory missions, and possible modification. In the governor's veto letter, he indicated he wanted his subject agencies to voluntarily work out solutions between themselves. Over a year and a half later, there has been no visible effort or work performed on how these agencies can better serve all Nevadans, not just licensees, and our state's wildlife, which is to be held and managed as a public trust for everyone, not exclusively to be killed. A renewed bipartisan legislative effort to review these entities for constructive changes, ones that include all those impacted, would be worthwhile during the budget setting cycle and process. One of the two major nonpartisan public policy think tanks in our state could facilitate the process. As for DETR, why is it collecting unemployment premiums for thousands of single-person owner-operated companies when there is zero probability of a filed claim? Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller.
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no other callers to testify at this time.
Thank you so much for that. So members, that ends our last day of pre-session budget presentations. I thank you all for the work you've put in for the last 2 weeks. We're going to take an hour lunch. We're a little behind. It is 12:20 now. We have IFC today that was scheduled to start at 1 o'clock, but I'm asking that you're back in your seats no later than 1:15 so we can start at 1:20. Thank you. And this meeting's adjourned.